Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo Sam Monson live on YouTube, coming at you from the Antonio Cromartie studio in part with Huggies. It's all brought to you by FanDuel, and it's time for our final draft grade reviews. Apologies to the South. I know you're always last. The Souths, AFC and NFC, but that's where we're going today. We're 3/4 of the way through the league. Be sure to check out the North, East, and West. We did that the last few days. Today, wrapping it up with the South. No shortage of storylines here with the Jags, the Texans, some fun drafts in here, so we'll go through all of them.
Some of the most interesting drafts this year in the Souths.
They are.
And we're unlikely to forget the Titans because, they made some big moves.
Big moves here. So, you ready to get going?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. We're going to start in the AFC South with the Houston Texans. And I don't have them pulled up exactly, but I know their first two.
It's a good start.
If there was a theme,
smooth.
The run game is the theme here for the Texans. I like themed drafts.
Okay.
At least, coming out of it.
You're right. First three picks, Kalen Rutledge, the guard in the first round. Second round, Caden McDonald, the defensive tackle / nose tackle from Ohio State. Third, also second round still. Marlon Klein, tight end from Michigan, blocking tight end. Guard again in the fourth round. Fabechi Nwewu.
Well done, I think. I meant to check that this morning.
It feels like it's close enough that no one's going to call you on it unless you really make a thing of it. Also, fourth round, Wade Woodaz, the linebacker from Clemson. Fifth round, Kamari Ramsey, safety from USC. Sixth round, Lewis Bond, wide receiver from Boston College. And then seventh round, Aiden Fisher, linebacker from Indiana. So we've got multiple guards, a blocking tight end, a nose tackle, and multiple linebackers within that draft class.
So the Texans, as usual, maneuvering the board, moving a bunch. They traded up to get Rutledge in the first. They end up with Caden McDonald in the second. Remember, they had the 2-2s from the Laramie Tunsil trade. Mm-hmm. The Marlon Klein pick, going at 59 overall. We'll talk about that a little bit, and we'll have probably a bigger story on that if you want some research on the tight ends, but I'll lean into it a little bit. But thoughts on those first couple picks? Rutledge was one of those many players thought to be a potential late first rounder. Several of those potential late first rounders didn't go, but Rutledge was the guy that sneaks into the first round. And everybody that I talked to, both in the league and guys like Brandon Thorne, absolutely love him, his attitude, the dog, and the O-line room attitude that Rutledge brings to the table.
So this is an interesting one where so Rutledge is a guy who's a fairly significant reach versus the consensus board, particularly when you're factoring in, draft capital given up and how high up in the draft it is and all those kinds of things, right? So it's another one of those. The Texans, the Jags, the 49ers, who we've already covered, those are like the three biggest teams, right, in terms of responsible for most of the reaches in this draft, right, relative to the consensus board. The big topic that was everybody's talking about coming out of the draft. Rutledge is one of the players that would be focusing on in that. But one thing that those sort of consensus boards or just general analysis from the outside can't really do a good job of is that stuff you were just talking about, right? The internal, he's a guy you want in your meeting room. The dude's just a dog. Like everything about him from an intangibles point of view is off the charts. Now, maybe there's a chance that NFL teams overrate that stuff, and actually you're better off just focusing on how does he play football, right? If he's such a good football player, why isn't he football good? It doesn't really matter if he's off the charts from a interpersonal point of view. However, if there is a lot of power to that stuff, that might explain a gap between evaluators from the outside being like, well, this is how he is just on tape, and then everybody inside or anyone that sort of had actual direct contact with the guy being like, dude, you want this guy in your football team. Yeah,
and Rutledge, look, I think a lot of people also thought he was a really good player. Continued to get better every single year. Yeah. Finished strong last year. I think he's pretty stout. What did he weigh in? I keep having the list weights in front of me, listed at 330, but he moved well in the shuttle. You could see him when he pulls and gets into space that he's pretty athletic.
316.
316?
Yep.
Yeah, but he just feels stout.
That is pretty stout.
What's that?
That is pretty stout at 6'4".
Yeah, this one, like he doesn't give a lot of ground in pass pro.
Particularly at center, by the way. You're parking that guy at center. That's a big center.
And that's the thing. We didn't know exactly as it all unfolded on round one, but he's going to play center for the Texans. And in a draft where there was 4 or 5 true centers that people were talking about. Rutledge ends up being the first center off the board, but also has this positional versatility. And I think the Texans, with all of the guard additions that we talked about this offseason, the guard additions, another one in the 4th round, Rutledge coming in to play center, Jake Andrews still being there. I think they're doing a nice job of throwing a lot at this offensive line, which we know has been a multi-year issue.
Yep.
And it's interesting, too, with the Tunsil trade, and it's been – I don't think the line was fully – it was a little bit better last year, but not maybe fully to where they would want it to go. But if you look at the Tunsil trade setting up this 2-year rebuild on the offensive line of getting Arante Ursary, now Braden Smith and Trent Brown, both potentially playing right tackle. There's a lot of position versatility on this line. And if Rutledge does lock down that center spot, it becomes a really nice value play here for the Texans.
Yeah, and the Texans have a really, really good roster overall, so they can afford, I think, to dedicate quite a lot of resources to the offensive line, because the one thing where you would say, if nothing happens, it could not be good, right? Even like other groups, yes, depth may be a concern, and if somebody gets injured or whatever, but like otherwise the thing's going to be fine, almost certainly. Whereas the offensive line, you could say, even if everybody stays healthy, there's a chance that offensive line still doesn't play that well. And if the offensive line doesn't play that well, C.J. Stroud probably doesn't play that well, and then the offense across the board is just in trouble. So it makes sense for this team to throw quite a lot at the offensive line, just as much insurance as possible.
From a production standpoint, Rutledge is a little bit lower in my numbers, so here's the interesting analysis on this. I broke down my draft score across players' career, their last 2 years, their final year. I talked about this a little bit in reverse with Peter Woods the other day. Rutledge fits the profile of his last year was his best from my numbers perspective, projection-wise. And those players, a little bit of buyer beware to those players, especially on the interior offensive line. And that was what was interesting about this particular draft class. All the interior offensive linemen, even including Ioane, Chase Basantis, Emmanuel Pregnon, and Keelan Rutledge, all landed in this what I call the one-year wonder deal, where it's not that they've never played well before, it's just a big chunk of their projection comes from their final year rather than the rest of their career.
Right.
Those players don't always perform great overall. The career matters, so just something to keep an eye on. I'm just trying to give you the honest view here with Rutledge, but I get him. I get it at 26.
Yeah, I find myself, so the one we've talked more about reaches in this draft than any other year that I can remember. I find myself closest to sort of agreeing with the highest ones in the draft. I don't know if that's just because the players are inherently better, so it's easier to talk yourself into those players,
right,
even though statistically those might actually be the most dangerous ones because you're investing more capital and you're deviating from the board potentially at a greater degree higher up. But I understand why a team like the Texans would be coveting Rutledge. I also think because there were so many, because everybody you hear on the team side of things, like, this dude's amazing, right? You want him in the building. There's no way I don't know if they could have waited to get him, right? Even if they were with the Caden McDonald pick. Like, I don't know if he would have made it that far.
Oh, I think there were, I think the Niners with the very next pick.
Right, may have.
Could have been in the mix.
Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a justification, but it makes you feel better about taking them there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens in buildings, though, too, right? Like, you take somebody.
No, I know.
You're like, I got a text message that I was going to take him, too. Like, there's a little bit of that justification in it, too. But I think the Niners would have been in the mix. I think a couple teams in the top half of the second round.
But it's always hard to know if that actually means anything.
No, I know.
Other than you wouldn't have gotten the player, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're correct in, therefore, overdrafting the player. It just means that, it means that you definitely would have had an alternative reality if you'd tried to play the board and let him fall to you. You would have had to go somewhere else.
Now, the Caden McDonald move, getting him
this pick.
10 picks later, absolutely love it.
Yeah.
We had very, in our 20 mocks that we did, had dropped McDonald onto the Texans. We had dropped other defensive tackles onto the Texans, and whether you got a disruptive, smaller player like a Peter Woods or any other type of defensive tackle, just the thought of adding that to what they already have on the defensive line was appealing. But when it's Caden McDonald, who brings a different skill set to what they have, the line resetter, as I keep saying, this is making the Texans' defensive line all the much better.
It's one of my favorite fits in the entire draft. I like Caden McDonald to most defensive lines. I think what he does extremely well. The run defense, the hold the point of attack, the move the offensive line backward stuff. Everyone focuses on the run game. And look, he'll absolutely improve the run defense for the Texans. But the thing that I'm most excited about is actually the pass rush stuff. Not because he'll get a ton of pressure by himself, but because he will squeeze that pocket from the interior. And you already have a pair of edge rushers that are absolutely unstoppable on the outside. So Caden McDonald will catalyze further production from both Will Anderson and Donnell Hunter. That's the exciting part to me. When you have somebody in the middle that can squeeze the pocket from the inside, that's going to trap the quarterback in an area where he's already vulnerable. So really excited by Caden McDonald on this. I'm a sucker for these early second-round picks where a team is traded back or a team trades up again and gets a guy that they were being mocked a lot in the first round. Yeah, I'm just automatically a sucker for that. Like if you've got a guy
in the first, so therefore it's good in the second.
I would have said it was a good pick in the first round, and you're able to get it in the second. I'm automatically in love with the pick.
The other part that I like is, look, if the Texans' defense is so good, a legit secondary, entire back seven. We know about the pass rushers. What's the strategy to take on Houston? Maybe establish the run. Maybe have some success on early rundowns and try to get out, stay out of third and longs. We don't want Will Anderson and Donnell Hunter getting after it. Well, Caden McDonald, I know they already have Tommy Togiai there, but Caden McDonald gives you that ability to get to 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9 if you're the Texans, slow down the run game, then you're inherently more into third and longs a little bit more. I think from a fit perspective, it's outstanding. We were giving McDonald to the Bears. I think a lot of Raiders fans may have wanted him at the top of the second. Like, he's a good fit for a lot of teams. But when you drop a guy who literally commands double teams, that's a cliche, but you have to block him with 2. If you block with 1, he's moving you backwards. Add that to this mix where you have a slightly undersized Sheldon Rankins, a slightly undersized Logan Hall. Now you have the body type buffet, but different style players and a great run defender in Caden McDonald to add to the mix here.
Yep.
So I really liked that. Didn't love the Marlon Klein pick, so we get into the tight end thing. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we'll talk about it a little bit with the Jags and a little bit with the Texans. But here's what I would encourage if you're a Texans fan coming in here. I've got probably like 15 to 20 minutes of research and second-round tight ends and, quote, reaches and the whole thing. We're going to do that on tomorrow's show, so go check that out. I'll just say Marlon Klein doesn't feel like a top 60 player in any draft class to me.
Yeah.
And this was in the middle of this run of the wide tight end. Like, I understand he's got the size. He can hang as an inline tight end. He's okay. I think from a run game perspective, he's okay. From a pass game perspective, he's an okay athlete. That just doesn't feel like a top 60 player to me.
Ranked 158th on the consensus board and somehow worse on both the forecasters and evaluators, which had him 168th and 171st.
So that would be my criticism of this pick. Now, look, I understand there's a run on tight ends. We need the inline guys. There's scarcity at the position. That's another philosophical debate that, again, I want to break down in more detail tomorrow. Didn't love the Klein pick at 59. Loved those first two with Rutledge and McDonald. Fabechi, the guard in round 4, had an elite, another one of those like late bloomer types, 5-year player, elite pass blocking grade from PFF last year at Oklahoma, some positional versatility, pitched in at center. So they've added a lot of O-line versatility, and I think he's got some ability to be this interior offensive line backup in the coming years as well.
Yep.
Kind of like Kamari Ramsey at safety for USC. I thought that was good value in round 5. Lewis Bond, just a dependable college receiver, and Aiden Fisher, intriguing 7th rounder linebacker out of Indiana, where I think he was always in and around the action for Indiana. That entire defense, fundamentally sound, and Fisher made a lot of plays for that national championship defense.
That one feels like one of those immediate, they drafted 2 players at the same position, Woodaz in the 4th, Fisher in the 7th, that just immediately before anything you're like, I feel like the 7th rounder is better than the 4th rounder.
Yeah. We got some special teams. I mean, I feel like the Texans were very role-specific with a lot of their picks in this draft, but their roster is in a good enough spot. Right. And when I say role-specific, there's not one, quote, high-value position. Maybe defensive tackle is a high-value position, but to get a blocking tight end, swing interior offensive lineman, your starting center, a couple special teams linebackers, I think they were filling some roles, but they're in one of the better roster positions, I think, of in the NFL to be able to do that.
The one interesting absence from their picks is they didn't take a corner anywhere. I mean, we were a lot of people expect them to go corner in round 1. Avion Terrell was a popular team player connection. they not only didn't do that, but they didn't take a corner at any point in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think it's not an on-paper need, but I think quarterback 3, you could tell last year.
Until somebody goes down, and then it's suddenly an acute need.
I liked that as a play just to stay strong there. But
it felt like they were targeting depth at some point,
Yes.
and it was just interesting that they didn't pick anybody.
That would have been one of those depth plays that I would have liked at corner. We've been using Renee Bugner's composite grading. Where did they land on?
They ranked 25th in the composite between the Chargers and the Broncos. The high watermark was a B+ from Nate Tice over at Yahoo. Also, Rob Matty from the AP had them with a B+. And then the low watermark was a C- from Sporting News. I think that's the low. Yeah, and another C- from RotoWorld.
I like it. Texans. Got no more use for the Texans.
No.
Indianapolis Colts. They did not have their first-round pick, traded back in round 2. Their first pick is C.J. Allen, the linebacker out of Georgia, at pick 53 overall. They get LSU safety A.J. Halsey in the 3rd round. 2 4th-rounders. You get Jalen Farmer, the guard out of Kentucky, and Bruce Betcher, the Oregon linebacker / center fielder. George Gums, edge rusher out of Florida, is their 5th-rounder. Caden Curry, short-armed edge rusher out of Ohio State in round 6.
Short-armed edge rusher in this draft?
This draft, weird. Seth McGowan, running back out of Kentucky in round 7, and then Deion Burks in round 7 at 254. I mean, if you're a draft fan, a couple of names in there. Betcher, had some hype early in the process. Deion Burks, a lot of people expected to go maybe late day 3 or into day 4. So those look on the surface like good value plays, or at least players that fell or went into a decent spot. But what did you think of this Colts draft overall?
Yeah, I have to admit the Colts draft kind of passed me by during the actual draft, and only after the fact when you look back at kind of the totality of it, you're like, oh, that's actually, given that they didn't have a pick for so long, that's actually a really nice haul to come away with. Like the fact that their first pick was 53 in the draft. So, midway through the 2nd round was the first time they came up. To be able to come out of this draft with, the first 3 picks, C.J. Allen, the linebacker from Georgia, A.J. Halsey, the safety from LSU, and then Jalen Farmer, the interior lineman from Kentucky, that's a really nice trio to be able to get from a 2nd, 3rd, and a 4th rounder. Allen, another one of those guys, could have gone 1st round. Generally, it felt like the entire process, everybody was sort of slowly souring on him, but I think he's a good linebacker that fills a need given where their defense was, their depth chart. And then Halsey was another guy who a ton of people loved in the draft process, and getting him in the 3rd round, awesome.
Yeah, I think we talked about the Texans maybe getting better in the run game. I think those first 2 picks helped the Colts in the run game at the 2nd level. Between Allen, he's got really good hands. He's good in and around the line of scrimmage. The question for him and the reason why he fell was because of how he plays in space. He's not the best covering backs out of the backfield, tight ends out of the backfield. Not great in coverage, but we've seen players overcome those limitations. Guys like T.J. Edwards, who weren't necessarily the best athletes in the world, and still be reasonable. Just making sure that they're in position. And Allen's not an awful athlete by any means, but you see him in space, and it's not pretty all the time. Both at Georgia, or if you're looking at him flip his hips at Pro Day on viral videos.
Yeah.
But he became good value at 53.
Yeah.
In this draft, and then Halsey. Love him as a low hole type of player. He's got really good ball skills. He attacks. He was a playmaker at Houston and LSU. I know our friend Jordan Reed from ESPN absolutely loved him. That was one of his guys in this draft. Tone setting, strong safety type, hits hard, tackles pretty well. I think there's a lot to like about Halsey. And again, at pick 78, I think you're getting 2 good solid football players at 53 and 78 in a draft where we keep talking about there's a reach here, there's a wide tight end there. I mean, you get 2 pretty good football players in a draft with no 1st round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really nice. Deion Burks in the 7th as well is kind of crazy in terms of value. Why did he slip that far?
I heard there was some off-field potentially.
Like, that's such a large slide that I don't think that that's explainable by just this is the way the draft went. Something I feel like has got to be there that wasn't public.
Yeah, Deion Burks, I didn't love him as a receiver overall.
No, same, but he felt like a pretty clear mid-round guy. Like, there's enough about his profile that would say that guy definitely gets drafted before he was.
So he's about 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", 4.3 speed.
Right, flat. 4.3 flat.
4.3 flat.
Yeah.
42.5-inch vertical, 90th percentile broad, Some of the change of direction numbers weren't as good relative to the speed, but game athleticism, all there as well. And, decent career at Oklahoma. And, I thought I thought he was a little overhyped at one point in the process because he was talked about as day 2. But when you get him way down in the 7th round, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, Dane Brugler in the Beast has him as a 3rd/4th rounder, 99th overall. I broadly agree with that. For that guy to almost go undrafted, I think is pretty crazy without it being explained by something that's not a public piece of information.
In my question with him, I think the fluidity and movement skills were always evident watching Burks. I always thought he made catches look a little bit more difficult. I thought he got to got to the ground, both 2023 and every time I watched him, it's like, man, everything just seems to be a little bit more difficult. Leaves his feet more than I would like to see, but that ends up becoming pretty good value in round 7.
The Colts receiving core is going to be, it's in transition at the moment with all that money thrown in the direction of Alec Pierce, with Michael Pittman traded away. They're going to be sort of shuffling everybody's role now. So
Josh Downs bumps up, but there are opportunities.
That's the thing. Like with Downs presumably ascending into a bigger role within the offense, potentially a lot of the gadget stuff that Josh Downs was doing is now available for somebody like Deion Burks to potentially do. Now, admittedly, the guy's a 7th rounder, so there's not like there's a ton of investment in him, but suddenly there is a potential role there automatically for Burks to grab hold of if he is that type of player.
Let me talk about the 2 edge rushers really quick too. 5th rounder George Gums and 6th rounder Caden Curry. Let me start with Curry. 30 and 5/8 inch arms on the edge. 0.7th percentile.
What are we doing here?
Per my numbers. It's a golden age of short armed.
Is that even shorter than Howell?
It's in Howell's range, I believe. But Curry was really productive at Ohio State too, with pretty good production in the run game, pretty good pass rush production. So we've got this incredible test of the Reuben Baines, Cassius Howells, and maybe Caden Curry. Maybe he doesn't get a shot as a 6th rounder, pick 214, but the short arm edge rushers to see if they can overcome their limitations. But Curry was a productive college player, especially last year at Ohio State.
See, he got the pro day bump. So it was 30 and 1/8 at the combine, which is shorter than Howell. But at his pro day, he went up to 30 and 5/8, which is longer than Howell's.
Unbelievable. So then you have George Gums, former receiver, and Gums got some Gumby to him a little bit, some flexibility around the edge and everything. Toolsy type of pass rusher. Pretty good workout, 41-inch vertical, like okay everywhere else workout-wise, but he's got really long arms. He's almost 34-inch arms and projectable type of player. So you have 2 different style players. I think Gums was transfer at Florida in 2024, had a couple decent seasons in the SEC. And so you have a little bit of a lower production Gums with longer, more projectable body, more productive Caden Curry with no arms. Interesting couple edge rushers to see if they could steal one on day 3 there.
No arms.
Betcher has got he was a center fielder, I believe, at Oregon. And another Dane Brugler. I mean, Dane loved him 2 years ago in the process before he declared, and I think he's pretty athletic linebacker to add to the mix as well. So 2 linebackers, 2 edge rushers, Jalen Farmer as the rotational backup on the interior. And then the other guy I wanted to highlight, Seth McGowan. He's a little bit older, but I would say running backs in this class, when I was with JJ Zacharyson talking running backs on his show, I said, he's one of my favorite day 3 type of guys, even though he's older, moves pretty well for his size and had a pretty nice season last year transferring into Kentucky. So I thought McGowan. So I thought they got pretty good value players across the board, and I don't know where it ended up grading-wise. I know we have Trevor on the show tomorrow, and this is one of his favorite drafts.
Yep. 11th overall in the composite grading. PFF, the entity formerly known as PFF, the artist, gave them an A. That was the highest grade of anybody. A couple of A minuses, CBS, Cleveland.com, Sharp Football all gave them A minuses. And then the worst grades they got were a C from Nate Davis at USA Today and a C plus from Roto World, our friend Eric Froton.
Eric, you gave him a what?
C plus.
C plus from Eric. I feel like he'd be a nice grader. Is he harsh?
Well, I'd have to look. He did the A. There's a couple of these people that split it by conference.
Oh, I got you.
So he did the AFC. I'd have to check I'd have to break down the GPA by conference, and I'm too lazy to do that. Certainly can't do it on the fly, just eyeballing it.
All right, we're certainly going to spend more time on some teams than others because there's just more discussion points. The Colts were like the most beige draft, right? Like we haven't talked about them.
Yeah, certainly. You're right. Because they didn't come up until 53, you're not even thinking about the Colts for so long in this draft.
They didn't come up till 53, and they didn't take a fifth rounder in round 2. So
yes,
there was less
right.
to talk
Between
about.
those two things, they weren't top of mind during the draft. Right. That's the thing. At the time where their first picks came up, they did something normal, whereas everyone else was reaching for a day 3 tight end.
And honestly, I think why a lot of people like the Colts draft, C.J. Allen, fringe first rounder, get him in the second.
Yeah.
A.J. Halsey, maybe a fringe second rounder, get him in the third. I know they go where they go, but I think they got 2 players where if you said those were your first 2 picks in the draft, it wouldn't be that bad, and the Colts get him in rounds 2 and 3.
Popular consensus picks, dare I say.
Yeah. Now on the other end, let's talk Jags.
On the other hand.
Jags are up next. Okay, so their first pick is pick 56. They go Nate Borkircher.
Right around the Colts.
Yes, true. The tight end out of Texas A&M.
That's exactly why nobody was talking about the Colts, because right around the same time, the Jags did one of the most insane things in the draft relative to expectations.
Let's just couch this. I'll preface all of this after we list the names. Albert Regis at pick 81, another Texas A&M player, the defensive tackle. Emmanuel Pregnon at pick 88. We thought he might be gone in the 40s or even higher, so they get him at 88. They get Jalen Husky, safety out of Maryland, at pick 100. Wesley Williams, the edge out of Duke, at pick 119 in round 4. Tanner Koziel, the tight end out of Houston, in round 5. 2 sixth-rounders, Josh Cameron and C.J. Williams, wide receivers out of Baylor and Stanford, respectively. And then in round 7, Zach Durfee, who was the Kalen Kaler's prospect this year.
Okay.
What's it called? Mr.
Prospect
Mr.
X.
Prospect X. That was Zach Durfee out of Washington.
I forgot to read that this year. That's good.
Pass rusher.
Let's go look at that.
And then Parker Hughes, the linebacker out of Middle Tennessee
State. So before you get into anything else, let me ask you, you said you've been talking about themes of drafts. What would be the theme of Jacksonville's draft to you?
I don't know if there's always a theme, but 2 tight ends. I think there's a bunch of teams who drafted 2 tight ends, and given the fact that the Jags did take Borkircher at 56, I think they're saying, and James Gladstone hinted at it a little bit, like, hey, we want more tight ends. That's where the league is going. Liam Cohen comes from the Sean McVay tree. Are they going to be imitating some of this 12, 13 personnel? You need tight end depth to be able to do that. I think that's one of the themes. Regis is a better run defender than pass rusher. So are they just overall improving on both sides of the ball, run game-wise? Pregnon at guard. I think that's one of the themes for the Jags.
I mean, I think
that and maybe not on-field theme, but the other theme is first full year of James Gladstone, his system, his process, and they're doing it their own way. Clearly, that's why we had all these, debates on the internet about reaching and consensus boards, and it's like, well, no, you don't know what they're doing in the building. Well, I know what they're doing in the building. They're doing it their way, and let's see how it all plays out.
That has to be the theme of this draft. It's whatever they're doing in James Gladstone's first year, whatever they've done within the building, whatever their system is, all of that stuff, it is producing a result that is absolutely, unique. It is very different. You see those charts every now and again that's like, here's the uniqueness of every scheme in the NFL, right? And on offense, Shanahan was usually in one weird corner, and then the other one was on defense. Flores is off by himself, right? The Jags are now off by themselves in some chart, when it comes to drafting. Whatever they're doing is unusual and unconventional and different to most teams in the NFL. I'm going to start with a compliment for this draft class because they drafted 10 times despite not having a first-round pick. That part I love as great process, right? You already traded away your first-round pick. We can talk about the debate as to whether that was worth it or not if you're moving Travis Hunter to being just a full-time player on one side of the ball, if that's even true, whatever. You didn't have a first-round pick. Your first pick is at 56 in this draft. So one thing you did do to help your chances the best is draft a lot of times. Now, the flip side of that is you may have offset all that by consistently reaching huge relative to the consensus board, with the exception of Emmanuel Pregnon, which I think was a great value pick.
So Borkircher being the first pick, and there's been a lot of discourse around this. In a nutshell, we talk about the reaching thing. It wouldn't matter if it wasn't historically relevant.
The only reason it matters is
that's why it matters. It's not because it's a it's the best board and blah. And honestly, some of the criticism around it. And look, I know every team's got to do their own work, and they're going to do their own work, and they shouldn't just draft off a board.
Correct.
That's not the point.
Yes.
The point is it's a general gauge of value. So Borkirch would be in 162 on my board. Where was he with Arif?
163.
163. So you get him at 56, 100 plus picks higher than maybe the expected. I mean, even if you got him at 90, 95, 100, he's probably still there. The other aspect of it, and I'm going to go into a deep dive tomorrow, but here's the gist of it. Consensus board reaches are not good on day 2 historically. They're the worst at tight end.
Right.
They're the worst position for day 2 reaches. And that's why, and again, reaches, you could air quote this whole thing. Oh, the Jags board's different.
Right.
I get it. I'm just saying based off the
We
data.
need to call it something.
It's a data point.
Yeah.
It's just reaches, for lack of a better
It's
term.
like, again, people get caught up in the name of the consensus board. Call it whatever you like. The point is there's a data set out there that has a historical power that says when you deviate against it huge, they're right more than you are, right? By a huge amount. It's like an 80% margin that if you deviate big from the consensus board or whatever you want to call that board, that you're wrong 80% of the time. That's why there's power to this. And we talk all the time about all these data points pre-draft should be used either as eliminators or as like a check to your process, right? Of course, every NFL team should have their own process. And James Gladstone talked about coming to an internal consensus. And that's great, but you're kind of missing the point here. The point is absolutely, come up with your own process, your own board, your own ranking of players. And then when you're about to pull the trigger and you look and you say, well, this says we're overdrafting a guy by 110, 100 and whatever it is picks, and the history of that is awful. Should we think twice about that? Like, are we sure on that? I know that, I understand remember when PFF used to, or any analytics company, they would do a new thing and it's like, we spent some time and here's what it spat out, right? And the first reply to one of these things would always be, if your thing is spitting out something this far off, should you not think about the process internally, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they looked at it and were like, ooh, are we sure? No, we have confidence in our system, right? The point is, historically, that's been rough.
I think, honestly, though, Sam, I think the discussion's twofold. And I'll just give a little bit of the research that I've done, and I'll break it down in more detail tomorrow, then we'll talk about the players. Day 2 tight ends, here's how I looked at it. Rounds 2 and 3 since 2015, actually more like 16, I think that I have this data. Were they 120 or higher on the consensus? So I'm not even talking massive reaches. I'm just saying 120 or higher. Did they go on day 2, which is anywhere between pick 33 and 100, or 101, depending on usually 100. So the results aren't great. Now, the one success story is a Jaguar. It's Brenton Strange. He's had, by my numbers, an average career and been a solid player in years in which he's been a starter. That's the one.
Old regime.
In the old regime, I'm just saying he happens to be a Jaguar.
Right.
But that's the one exception. The misses here are Jordan Atkins, Tip Ryman, Josiah DeGuara, Trey McKitty, Jonnu Smith's in as a miss. That's kind of like, hit or miss depending on what you think about him. Just saying with the data because his blocking hasn't been great. He's a below average player in my numbers. Drew Sample, Devin Asiasi. And those are all we've covered the draft during this entire time. Every single time these picks came up, I was like, So I'm generally anti day 2 tight end unless it's like a legit Trey McBride, like a legit pass catcher, but not the Y tight end thing.
We said that before we went live, I think is a point worth making before we should spend some time talking about the actual players rather than rehashing the Jags draft as from a conceptual point of view. But everyone at the moment this year is being so caught up in this debate over the consensus board. What even is a consensus? Who's the consensus? Like you're not in the building. Your opinion is worthless. And it's distracting. It's like it's kind of irrelevant to the whole concept, right? The point is we would always be having these discussions. It's just now there's an actual data point to point to illustrate why we think it's crazy, right? If you rewind 10 years and a team did the same thing, everybody would have the same reaction, right? It's like, that guy's not a round 2 tight end. What are you doing? That's a massive reach. That's crazy. It's just that we wouldn't be pointing to a consensus board and saying, here, look, there's a list that says it's crazy, and there's a history of this list being right when you do these things, right? The point is we've just changed. It's the exact same discussion we would already be talking about the fact that this is a crazy draft pick, we just wouldn't have evidence to back it up, right? It would just be opinion. Now it's opinion and the fact that there's some data to back this up.
Even without the reach part of it, day 2 tight ends don't have a great history anyway. This is like
this is the thing.
Luke Schoonmaker. Like, I didn't like that pick at the time, right? These things come to mind. We'll break it down in more detail tomorrow. Now, as of the player, the last thing I'll just say philosophically, and maybe there's some galaxy brain stuff going here where James Gladstone and the Jags actually started this run on tight end. So maybe in the end, it's if you start the run and other people follow, it's not the biggest deal in the world because other players fall. Fine. I guess the other philosophical debate that I would have, just throw out there, do you need in round 2 to make the biggest scheme? Do you need to overhaul your scheme? Like, are you so hell-bent on next year we need to have 4 active tight ends every week? We have to do it. We got to get our tight end now. And again, the Texans doing this with Marlon Klein before pick 60, or the Jags doing this with Borkircher. Is it so important that we do that we would pass up other pass rushers or other corners or other tackles or whatever the other positions are that are more valuable historically? Are you so like, I need to have my number 2 and 3 tight end locked in this year? I got to do this in the first 60 picks. That's more of the philosophical question for me too, about the positional value of it in addition to the reach. And then, is that necessary?
So overall, philosophically, with all these reaches, it's fair to say I don't think we're going to love the Jags draft overall because it felt like a lot of these players were significantly overdrafted. That being said, Borkircher was a guy Renner loved. He brought him up on our show before. He had him as tight end 3, I think, in this draft. So, it's a massive reach relative to the consensus board, but there were people out there that absolutely love this guy.
And I liked
including apparently the Jags.
I liked a lot of what he did on film. So let's talk about the players and let's just give fair analysis here. Borkircher, early in the season, he's got this game-winning touchdown against Notre Dame. And as just a college football fan watching every week, I'm like, this dude's going to make plays this year. Yeah. This dude looks great. And they just never targeted him. They had inconsistent quarterback play. It was his first year at A&M. He's a 5-year player. But he's got one good year of not even one good year of production, but he was good last year, but he just rarely got targeted throughout his whole career.
So there's a couple of guys in this draft that are like that, like Oscar Delp, right? There's a couple of guys that are like, which was the story with George Kittle as well, right? There were a few guys this year where it's like, I don't understand why they weren't more productive, and it wasn't because of anything they were doing. It's because they just didn't see the ball.
And Delp, I know, had an elite athletic profile too. Borkircher didn't necessarily have that, but you saw him. I thought he was a smooth pass catcher. I thought he used his body well. Like, there's a lot to like about Borkircher. It was just higher, not just in the consensus, but even like when you talk to people around the league, it's like, yes, this was a surprise, right? So it's not about the consensus thing, as you said. The league also, I think a lot of people agreed they weren't expecting him to go off the board anytime on day 2. Therefore, you got him a lot higher than expected. But he's not, he could end up being a really good player.
Right.
Albert Regis was the next. He goes at 81. He was a lot lower on the consensus board. I thought both Texas A&M defensive tackles, Tyler Adietum and Regis, went a little bit higher than expected. But once again, I kind of get it. He's got violent hands. He's disruptive in the run game. I think he's awful from an anchor perspective. So if you got to avoid letting him trying to take on double teams, or he'll get moved and knocked to the ground pretty easily. And he's got a below-average pass rush profile. So, once again, if you're just trying to you're getting a rotational defensive tackle. It's in round 3, but it's still maybe around early. Fine. But that's what you're getting in Regis. He could do some damage in the run game. I know some people were highlighting, well, when he left the game with A&M, they got run all over. Yeah, he's pretty decent in the run game. He's not great from taking on double teams perspective.
Despite being only, 300 pounds. Like, he's another one of these interesting guys who's actually – his body type doesn't fit the type of player that he actually is. What's his name? Byron Murphy from Seattle was a bit like this. Like, they had him playing nose tackle, even though they had Tavondre Sweat at 360 pounds. Like, Byron Murphy was the guy that was the run defending nose tackle in that defense. He brought a lot more pass rush juice than Regis to the table as well. But my point is, for a guy who's only in and around 300 pounds, which is 3-tech type body, he's actually, his skill set is run defense. He's another guy a bit like Keelan Rutledge we talked about before. Everybody raves about him in terms of the off-field stuff, the work ethic, the sort of leadership that he shows. Like, there are reasons to like him. It's just, again, not that much maybe.
Now, Pregnon going at 88, we were trying to figure out, okay, why did he fall? No, so that ends up becoming one of the steals, theoretically, of this draft.
Right.
A guy that was thought of, to be in the 40s. early second round, maybe the second, third, fourth guard off the board. He had, his career. He's older. He'll be, he's 24 and a half, 24, whatever he is right now. And his career just got better as his career went on. More, not completely a late bloomer. He's played a lot of ball between Wyoming, USC, and Oregon, but had his best play over these last couple of years. Good size. I think he can help in the run game as well. And I think he's got a chance to play, even as a third rounder at pick 88.
Yeah, I really like this pick. I think Pregnon's a good player. Even if you had concerns about his sort of athleticism or whatever, I think the third where they got him is an absolute steal. Like, again, another guy that was being talked about is could he sneak into the first round, even if that was made up and hype and whatever was fake. I think a second round area is where he should have gone. The power, the explosiveness, his ability to absolutely detonate people on contact when he moves, that all plays, right? And even if there's some footwork, speed type problems, I think the third round is a steal for him.
Beyond that, I think Tanner Colziel is the other guy I'm most intrigued with at Houston. I think one of the themes of the entire draft to me, we'll talk about this with Lance Erline, I thought some tight ends with some better receiving chops. Colziel, Jack Endries, Carson Ryan. There was a bunch of guys who went in rounds 5 through 7 who I think can catch the ball, can create mismatches.
Everybody was chasing the blocker.
Yes, the blockers went early. The pass catchers went late. So that's why on paper, and look, the media consensus and all, like, they don't care about the inline blocker. But the NFL values that a little bit more. We can have that debate as well. But you've got this intriguing group of day 3 tight ends, and so all of a sudden the Jags feel like, they got Colziel too. Look, if you told me they got Burkhardt and Colziel, I'm like, that's actually a pretty good duo of tight ends. I love it. It's just a matter of did they took them. Value it and play the draft well. It's a pretty good duo of tight ends that they're adding to the mix here to go with Brenton Strange.
I think, what people are really – everyone's missing the big picture here. The reason to really criticize James Gladstone has got nothing to do with the players that they selected in the draft. Did you see the name that they signed in as an undrafted free agent?
Who's that?
The Jacksonville Jaguars have signed free agent Brian Thomas Jr., edge rusher from South Carolina.
The edge rusher, right.
So they now have 2 Brian Thomas Jr.'s on the team.
Double BTJ.
Which is upsetting unless they trade one of them away, which seems less likely now that the draft is happening.
Just messing everybody.
Yeah. Now you've got to – that's annoying. That's going to – think how much that's screwing everybody's spreadsheet. All the nerds.
That's why you use player IDs. You got to use IDs. No, I hate that. I hate that. Beyond that, I look, day 3 reaches, quote unquote, aren't as big of a deal.
Right. However.
But C.J. Williams and Parker Hughes were both like 670 or something like that, I think, right? Zach Durfee's actually interesting, Prospect X.
That was one of the funniest things, right? They drafted, whatever the number was, they drafted a guy that was like 675 on the consensus board, wherever they got him. And somebody replied to a Reefs tweet being like, wow, at least they didn't reach for 676. And then, the next guy they drafted was 676.
That's pretty hilarious.
I mean, you can't, look, whatever about criticizing or evaluating whether it was smart or not, you can't deny that that's objectively hilarious.
It is hilarious. Zach Durfee, though, the Prospect X player, pick 233 in round 7. Interesting player at Washington. He hasn't played a ton of football. He's been pretty productive when he's been out there. Plus pass rushing production, pass rush win rate. He was supposed to have a breakout year for Washington, just didn't play over 500 snaps. But he was on my radar before the season as a potential breakout player. I think he ends up being a pretty good value in round 7. So that's your Jags draft. What did the people think? Let me just say this really quick. The analysis, I've seen analysis where it's like James Gladstone, he's arrogant, he's this, he's that. I hate that stuff. That's absurd. I think disagreeing with the draft and saying I hate your picks, fine. But to project that, he just thinks he's smarter than everybody in this. They used to do that with Belichick all the time, and it only attaches to either a personality or, I think in Gladstone's case, the fact that he's young, right? If this was Chris Ballard doing it in year 8 of his GM tenure, nobody's like, man, Chris Ballard's so arrogant. He just went off the consensus board. But because it's either Bill Belichick, who always did things differently, they used to throw arrogance his way, and maybe he was. And then James.
See, this is the thing.
And then James, you think James is arrogant at just because he's 34? I don't.
No,
it's
so
just, he's doing it his own. Like, let's see how it plays out. That's fine. If you want to criticize it, fine. And we've been critical of a couple of the picks or things we might do differently, but let's see it play out before you call him arrogant.
Look, I don't think it's necessarily an unreasonable charge. That line of there's a fine line between genius and madness. There's a very fine line between arrogance and confidence in your output, right? And when I brought up before PFF or let's say any other analytics people, but PFF because we were in that building and know how it worked. Like when we created a new data point or whatever, right? We've created this thing, we've researched it or whatever. We believe there's power to this thing, and then the first thing somebody's said is like, well, that's so far from conventional wisdom. Like, why would you not go back to the drawing board? Like, well, this is clearly spitting out an incorrect output, right? And the point we would like a lot of the times we would be like, well, we did that. We already did this sort of round of self-checking and scouting when it first came back with the number. We went back and we looked at the inputs and we checked it and we ran it and we blah, blah. And then eventually when it comes out again, you're like, I'm confident of this process. And I now believe that this thing is showing like that conventional wisdom was wrong, right? And immediately PFF would get branded as arrogant for that, right? Well, you think you know better than everybody else? Like, well, arrogance. The arrogance is dripping. It's disgusting, right? So, and this is clearly basically what James Gladstone and the Jags have done, right? Like, there's no way, with as meticulous as they are of stripping away bias and let's get everything blah, blah, there's no way that they weren't aware that this would be that some of these picks would be significant reaches relative to conventional consensus boards, blah, 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 right? They've clearly thought about it and decided we're right.
It's more
we're right and you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
Now, historically, the data says they're not, right? That's where the arrogance comes from. Historically, the data says the chances are Gladstone and the Jags are wrong about this, right? And generally speaking, when you deviate from consensus by that much, that often, you're wrong most of the time. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that is kind of an arrogant approach to the thing of saying, we've cracked it, you're wrong, we've come up with a better way. That doesn't mean they're wrong, right? Like, this is the thing. If you're right, none of it matters. Like, if they have actually cracked the draft. Here's the thing, right? I don't like giving you compliments because, but there's from the data I've seen, there's a fairly healthy chance that you have actually cracked the draft with your model and all the data that's as close as anyone's going to get to cracking it, right? I'm not saying you're going to be like batting 1,000, everything you do is turned to gold and blah, blah. But you do appear to have a significant drafting edge over any process that anybody's been employing since the draft was created, right? You may have actually cracked this thing. So and the Jags are doing something different to you. But if the Jags have gone in there and they've found another thing that gives them a different avenue to cracking the draft, right? And they're going to find another 50% jump over everybody else, then they can be arrogant because they're right? Like, is that arrogance if you're like, yes, I'm right, you're wrong, and you're right about being right?
Confidence, though? And look,
But I think it is arrogant to think that it's like that image, right? What's the one thing that makes you like this, right? Where it's one guy in front of a million people being like, yes, you're all wrong, right? I mean, that is arrogant, but that doesn't mean the guy is wrong. If the guy is right, he can be arrogant and also correct, right? Like, so that's the thing. I don't think it's an unreasonable charge to say, based off what they did and based off the evidence that everybody has, that is an arrogant approach to what they're doing. But that doesn't mean they're wrong.
I mean, I could be conveyed as arrogant by
right.
When I meet with NFL general managers and say, "Hey, I've got some data that maybe we could improve your drafting if you follow the." I mean,
look
here.
Again. Read the definition of arrogance. Arrogant describes having or showing an offensive, exaggerated sense of one's own importance, superiority, or abilities. Right?
But this isn't a superiority. Like, they're just doing whatever they're just.
Yeah, but they're coming out and being like, look, it doesn't matter what your consensus is. We came to consensus in the building and we're right. Right? Like, again, there's a fine line between arrogance and confidence in being correct. Right? And I don't know which way the Jags are on right now. But I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to be like, this is an arrogant approach to the draft. It is, but they may still be right.
It's confidence until he's.
Anyway. Bottom line,
acting like he knows better.
The consensus
grades are pretty low.
The composite grading, which is factoring in consensus,
yes,
has them with the worst draft in the NFL. The highest mark that they got was from Chad Reuter, who works for the NFL. The highest non-bias grade that they got was from CBS Sports, who gave them a B-, which is that Renner? Because Renner loved, Borgort.
Yeah, he got his favorite tight end.
So a B- was the highest real grade they got. Most of their grades were Ds. Sharp Football gave them an F, as did Roto World, which is Eric Froton. You got 2 D-, which is Charles McDaniel from Yahoo, and
what did Prisco give him? He's a Jags guy.
Prisco gave them a
Baselli.
C- from memory. Where is he?
C+.
C+. Yeah, C+. Prisco. So yeah, everyone thought the Jags grade their draft stank.
That's right. Prisco has them with the same draft as the Eagles.
Yes, they collectively, their GPA across everybody's grades was 1.34, which is way worse than anybody else. The Rams were 1.79. They were the only two below 2.
I'll just say this. I think extreme strategies are fun. The Falcons trading up.
Oh, I'm all for them doing it.
The Falcons drafting Penix, the Rams drafting Simpson, the Jags having a different draft, the Texans. Extreme strategies are fun. Let's see it all play out.
I mean, look, bottom line is, all we can do is grade what we think based off the evidence we have, right? The evidence that we have says that the chances the Jags are right on this and everybody else is wrong is not tremendously high, right? Now, again, I do like that they drafted in volume. I do love the Pregnon pick. There are things they did that I like. But generally, I think reaching multiple times by like 3-figure, differences is generally not a good strategy, and we'll get to see how it plays out. But I'm all for it because it's entertaining, right? And we get all anybody's been talking about since the draft is this, right? Consensus, that gives us stuff to talk about. So I'm all for them doing it. I just think it's probably bad.
All right, let's move on. Tennessee Titans to wrap up the AFC South. They start off at pick 4, going Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. They trade back into the first round to pick 31 to get Keldrick Falk, the edge rusher out of Auburn. Their second round picks Anthony Hill, the linebacker out of Texas. And then they don't pick again until round 5 after maneuvering the board. Fernando Carmona, the guard out of Arkansas, is their first fifth rounder. Then Nick Singleton, the running back out of Penn State. They go defensive tackle Jackie Marshall from Baylor in round 6. Second, sixth rounder is Pat Coogan, the center out of Indiana. And then Jaron Kanak, the tight end out of Oklahoma in round 7. Thoughts on the Titans draft here?
I like this draft. It's one of those ones that, all the picks at the top I loved, right? Like their first 3 picks I really liked. It's going to be tainted slightly by the fact that they're higher picks and you tend to like those more, but I really like their first 3 picks. I saw there was some criticism for the Carnell Tate pick. I disagree. I think that was a really good pick. I was surprised they did it, and I guess part of that is pleasant surprise that they went the way I would have gone if I was drafting at that spot. Maybe it was affected by the fact that Jeremiah Love was gone, and that removed that temptation from them. That would have been an interesting thing to see if they would have stuck with Tate had Jeremiah Love been on the board. But look, if you're debating defensive player that's available versus Carnell Tate, I absolutely endorse taking Tate to add to Cam Ward to try to maximize what his development is going to look like going forward.
Give me the synopsis on what you think of Tate as a player. I'll tell you what I think of him as a player, and then I want to go through. I think this was the right move for the Titans at 4. So Tate as a player for you. He was wide receiver 1 for you and for me. Why did we like him? And
fairly comfortably
right
as well.
Move at 4
yeah, fairly. I think there was a gap between him and anybody else. I get the reservations. Malik Neighbors brought it up right during their broadcast on Bleacher Report. Like he's never even been the number 1 receiver on his own team. It's like, okay, it's a fair criticism, not because like the counter to that, and I think Micah Parsons used this counter, is like Jeremiah Smith is Julio Jones. So of course he's not going to be you know what I mean? Not being Julio Jones is not a reason to ding a guy.
That argument has been used in 2 different ways though. One has been a knock on his talent. He's not even.
So that's where it's not fair.
It's not fair if it's a knock on his talent. It is fair.
Yes.
Bucky Brooks has said, well, he hasn't been the guy, handle the double teams. That's a fair, not even criticism, but that's a fair thing to question.
Yeah.
Can he be the guy and you're taking him at 4?
Right. That's where I was going with that. Like,
sorry to interrupt.
It's not reasonable to be like, well, you were the number 2 in your own team, so how good can you be when the number 1 is basically Julio Jones, right? That's where it's unreasonable. But it is fair to say, if you now need him to step into being the number 1 role, and he's never done that because we don't know that he can do that because Jeremiah Smith has been getting all the attention. What happens when Carnell Tate is facing all the attention? And this is where, to me, he's a he's an inflated, supersized version of Devontae Smith for Philadelphia, right? He's an inch or two bit taller, but he's also, more importantly, about 30 pounds heavier, 25 pounds heavier. But that's who he's like in style to me. And, same with Devontae Smith. He's smooth in everything he does. He's excellent at the catch point. He high points it. He's great sideline catches. He stops on a dime. They are so similar in play style to me. But obviously, Carnell Tate is bigger. And that's interesting again, because that's the same question mark you still have for Devontae Smith, is he's never really succeeded as the number one guy in the NFL, right? He only took the step forward, really, when A.J. Brown arrived. And now if they're trading away A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith has to go back to being that number one role, we don't really know that he can still be a dominant force doing that. So that's where I think it is kind of interesting. The thing is, from Tennessee's point of view, number one, I think he can do that, right? I don't really see negatives to his tape. I think his releases are excellent. He's extremely hard to jam. He's extremely hard to just to hit during his routes. He's very good at avoiding contact during routes, which enables him to get a ton of separation, which enables him to be a great deep threat. He's great at the catch point, as we said. He's smooth. Route running's great. Sideline ability. I don't really see negatives to his tape, really, at all. My only negatives in my notes are he's not absolutely blazing, right? He ran a 4.5 or whatever it is. He's not a 4.3, 4.2 guy. And he's 190 pounds, not 200 plus pounds. Like, he's not physically monstrous. Yeah. But that's it. That's basically all his flaws. And the fact that, the question mark of what happens if you take Jeremiah Smith off the field. But, like, his play doesn't really have negatives to it. So, number one, I think he can be a number one guy within an offense. I don't see a reason why he can't be. And then number two, even if he can't be, and they just end up with multiple number two options, it's still a big upgrade for Cam Ward and a massive need and all those kinds of things. So it's still not a bad pick.
I agree. I love Tate as a player. I think he's good at everything, what you described. I thought it was funny. There was a report that, like, remember right after he ran the 4.53, well, multiple scouts had him in the 4.4s. It's like, does it really matter if he ran 4.47
right.
or 4.53? It doesn't show up on field. Like, man, he's slow. His footwork and route running is so good.
I mean, his primary production came as a deep threat. So it's like
a deep threat where he was behind the defense
most of the time,
and then underthrown, and then still making a contested catch. So if you just watch the broadcast, you're like, man, this guy's a contested catch, savant. But he's got two steps on the guy until Julian Sayin was underthrowing him a bunch. I know Sayin completed a lot of passes. Ohio State fans. Anyway, I like Tate a lot. I think this is the right move for the Titans. For them at 4, I think David Bailey and then Carnell Tate were the two players I would have wanted the most for them if I was sitting at 4. I thought again, I'm just lower on Arvell Reese because of the uncertainty of projecting him. And I think of all the places to project Arvell Reese, a true four-man front, 4-down defensive line like Robert Saleh's was the most difficult place to project him. I think it's a nice spot for him with the Giants where he could play a little hybrid and move around. And Robert Saleh is not this, move a guy around and tap into multiple skill sets. He would have either been a linebacker or a pass rusher. And so if you were debating Carnell Tate and Arvell Reese, I think of all the teams in the top 5, it was the hardest for the Titans to say, clearly he's just a 4-3 defensive end and go. I think that was risky for a team like Tennessee. And I thought it made Tate the right move. In addition to, yes, Cam Ward's going to need weapons. The O-line's in decent spot. They got to figure out right guard, but it's in a decent spot. And now you add him to the mix with Calvin Ridley, with Rondale Robinson, with the 2 rookies from last year, the second-year players now, Alec Ayamena and Chimera DK. I think they've got a versatile group there. And so, yes, in a random year, like if you said in a vacuum, well, Carnell Tate's the number 4 overall pick, is it a little rich for him? Yeah, like in a vacuum, but not in this draft.
Yeah.
Right? But like, what's the difference? We would have no problem with the Commanders at 7, the Saints at 8, the Chiefs at 9, taking him. Well, the Titans can't get there. Well, they can't trade down with those teams. Yeah. No one wants to come up to 4, so you take him at 4. I think it's fine.
But you're comparing him to like is a high end number 2 / number 1, right? Like T. Higgins say. Let's say because T. Higgins are similar conversations. He is definitely a high end 2. And there are times where Jamar Chase is out where T. Higgins looks like a number one.
Right.
So that's the same sort of area we're in with Carnell Tate, right? He's definitely going to be a good 2. And then, well, not definitely. We think he's going to be a good 2, and he might be able to be a decent 1 as well. We just don't know, right? So let's say he's T. Higgins for the moment. Is T. Higgins more valuable than an off-the-ball linebacker who, your standard projection at off-the-ball linebacker? We think this guy's going to be good, but who knows? Off-the-ball linebacker is a difficult position to project into the NFL. That's Sonny Styles. It might also be Arvell Reese, if that's who you're drafting that high. Or a project defensive end who's never really done it, the conversion that you're guessing, can Arvell Reese turn into that guy? Or Ruben Bain, who looks like a dominant player, but has got historically short arms, and we're terrified of that precedent, right? I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that T. Higgins / Carnell Tate is that valuable in terms of this draft if you're projecting and using the sort of the certainty element of it to inflate that position. I think it's a perfectly good pick.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was some late buzz around Sonny Styles, and same thing, right? Like if you knew you were going to get a linebacker versus a T. Higgins-like production from a receiver, like I'd take the receiver. So I thought it was the right move. Both because I like Tate and I think this is the right positional value move in the fit for the Titans at 4. So I wasn't surprised by it. I mean, we were surprised because I didn't know if they would do it.
Yeah.
Because that was what I would do.
Right.
And teams don't always do what I would do.
Usually don't.
Usually don't. But I thought it was the right move for the Titans.
Yep.
And then trade back in. I think they were one of the teams where if they didn't get an edge, maybe they come back with receiver. They need a starting guard. I thought they could have been in the mix for Keelan Rutledge at the beginning of the second, but they get the receiver. And once they did that, I was thinking, well, what about the TJ Parkers and the edge rushers of the world? And Keldrick Falk falls, and they come back and get him at 31. And as you said on draft night, hey, for a guy that was talked about as top 15 or top 20, that ends up being pretty good value to get him at 31. For all of his flaws, he's not a polished pass rusher yet, but he's got the size, length, the tools. He's a good enough athlete, and he's an excellent run defender. Excellent run defender, both when he's playing over the guard, over the tackle, or even on the edge.
Yeah, I love this pick. Look, when people were talking about Keldrick Falk as a potential top 10 player, that I didn't like at all. But to get him at the bottom of the first round, even to trade back in and do it, I think is great value. Like, at some point, you have to acknowledge the sort of positive projection of what he could be at that size and, that athleticism profile and say, look, there's a reason people were talking about this guy as a potential top 10 player. I mean, 6'6", 275, who runs a 4.67 and has got some change of direction chops as well. Like, these are rare physical abilities, and he is a good run defender already. And I think his pass rushing upside is there. Like, I think he's very rudimentary with his sort of move set and stuff, which is, on the one hand, it's a reason to not like him as a player. Like, he's not very developed right now. On the other hand, if he's 20 years old and he's got that physical skill set and you're going to a team with a good defensive coach, would you not bank on that improving quickly and fairly significantly? And if that's the case, he could be a very good player.
If you look at, Saleh had Eric Armstead in San Francisco for a little bit, some similarities body type wise to Falk and maybe some of the multi-gap versatility that they had there. Anthony Hill goes at pick 60, kind of similar to C.J. Allen, both guys that were either Allen was talked about in the first round but became a fringe first rounder. Hill had some of that hype throughout his career at Texas, played a lot of ball over there. I think he's another one of those really good run defending linebackers, a little bit less good in coverage and seeing things from a coverage perspective, but ends up being a pretty good player here at 60. I know Texas fans loved him. He's had a nice career there.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the sort of concerns or potential limitations, but he's a good player, and that's just adding another impact playmaker potentially to that defense.
So I think they traded up to get him as well. So they targeted those two defensive players, Falk and Hill, because they had a lot of picks coming in, and because they targeted those players, end up with no 3 and no 4 in this draft. After that was 2 developmental offensive linemen, Fernando Carmona and Pat Coogan. I think GM Mike Bergonzi had some sort of tag for those guys, like leadership. Every team's got their tags and their color codes. They get the tags, right? They get the leadership tags. So I think that's good depth on the on the offensive line. Nick Singleton's a really interesting one in round 5. I didn't love him as a running back throughout the process. I don't think the NFL did either. That's why he goes in round 5. But as a former 5-star, really athletic, good pass catcher. He made a lot of his best plays in the pass game. kick return skills. He just doesn't have a natural feel as a runner. You're either following blockers, but like you give him a hole, he could take it to the house. And in round 5, that's good. There was a point because of the 5-star pedigree, I thought he was going to go in the second round or something, but I think the process worked out well to the point where, okay, in round 5, that's a worthwhile shot on Singleton there.
Yep, absolutely.
And then Jackie Marshall for my transfer portal consulting. He was on the radar a couple of years ago. He got hurt this past year. It didn't look the same, but in 24, really liked him. The old frog stance, defensive tackle, but he's tough to block, really good run defender. I thought the scheme limited him a little bit from a pass rush perspective. I didn't know if he would even get drafted, but I thought it was nice seeing his name pop up because I did like him a little bit throughout the process. I think he can, when he's healthy, be a decent rotational player.
You're big into this, just name players for an entire show. Who's the first player that pops into your mind when you think of old frog stance defensive tackles?
Oh, Oregon, long 5-tech body, Tyler, something or other.
I don't know who you're talking about.
That's who I think of. Somebody in the chat will get it.
The name that came to mind for me was Abreu Franklin.
What?
Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
All right, and then tackle.
The other news out of Tennessee, President Chad Brinker stepped down last night. If those who don't follow Tennessee front office politics, there has been a change for 6 straight years, either the head coach, the general manager, or now the president. Brinker was given full personnel control for the 2024 season, also hired Mike Bergonzi, Everett, Mass, by the way. Married a girl from North Reading High. Shout out to the Hornets. But he hired Bergonzi. This past January, Bergonzi was given full roster control because Brinker had it previously. So there's Rand Carthon's been in and out. I mean, the Vrabel firing. Brian Callahan's been fired. I mean, there's been a lot of turnover in the Tennessee front office. But Brinker's out now, said he was stepping away. He's looking for other opportunities from a eval standpoint. I believe looking for GM opportunity. But Bergonzi has full roster control. He's the GM now, and there's more turnover going on in Tennessee.
I would like to personally thank Chad for not using the term Miss Amy in his leaving message. He simply referred to her as Amy twice. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe that's why he's not a cultural fit within the building.
I've heard him refer to her as Miss Amy. I think once you're out the building, you don't have to.
Oh, really?
You don't have.
You think it's
yes.
Okay? Once you're no longer working for Miss Amy, she just becomes Amy.
That's correct.
Huh.
You don't have to appeal to the billionaires.
Okay.
After you leave, I believe.
Okay.
All right, that's it for the South. Let's take a quick break and get to the NFC.
Hang on, wait, we need grading.
Hold on.
Composite grading.
Grades.
They were 12th. I was higher on Tennessee's than apparently the composite. They did have some A's in there, though. Sporting News gave them an A+. They also had an A from Sports Illustrated, from Yahoo, which is Nate Tice. They had a couple of A-minuses. The worst grade they got a few C+. Marcus Bloomberg, who, remember, that's the guy with the way harsh grading. Prisco, naturally, and Bleacher Report gave them C's, and then a couple more C+. Nate Davis and ESPN. Mel Kiper gave him a C+. Didn't like it.
Oh, Mel gave a C+.
Didn't like it. That's almost as harsh as Kiper got. Kiper got down to a C, but C+ was almost as harsh.
Probably didn't like Tate at 4.
Somebody was telling who was the thing? Somebody had a tweet about what Mel hated somebody's draft for like the most absurd reason I've ever heard in my life.
Find it out.
I need to go find that.
All right, now quick break before we get to the NFC South. All right, right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right, turn $5 into $250 in bonus bets just for getting started. And when every possession matters in the playoffs, FanDuel makes it easy to get closer to the action. From player props on your favorite stars to all the tools you need to back them up. FanDuel puts player research right at your fingertips so you can check stats, trends, matchups all in one place and make your picks with confidence. It's everything you need all in one app, so don't miss your shot. Head to FanDuel.com/33rd to get started. FanDuel, play your game. 21 plus in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or call 1-877-770-7867 in Louisiana. Quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage, but when Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors, and after a few weeks, you'll get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. If you need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in the car, Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You get started today at Root.com. All right, we're back talking NFC South, Sam. We're 7/8 of the way.
I found I was wrong. Mel Kiper didn't hate somebody's draft for a crazy reason. He loved somebody's draft for a crazy reason. John Ledger just tweeting that Mel Kiper said the Cardinals were right to take Jeremiah Love because he can play outside receiver or in the slot while Algier or Connor play running back. So that's how you deploy them all at the same time. You know, get one of them in the backfield, but then Jeremiah Love can go play wide receiver while they do that. That's why it's good.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get to it. Atlanta Falcons. First up here, the final division. Of course, they didn't have a first rounder after trading trading their first rounder.
Trading back into last year's first round.
Trading into the first round last year for James Pierce. So their first pick was at 48, Avion Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson, reuniting with his brother, A.J. Terrell. Round 3, Zechariah Branch, the wide receiver out of Georgia. They go Kendall Daniels, linebacker out of Oklahoma, in round 4. This is the pick where Matt Ryan was going nuts. He was so excited. He must have loved Kendall Daniels. Ontario Thompson, 6th round defensive tackle out of Washington. Harold Perkins, the linebacker / edge / star from LSU. And then Ethan Ananwa, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State, I believe, via Rice, I believe. Your thoughts on the Falcons draft? Another one of those. We didn't get to talk about the Falcons a lot pre-draft because they didn't have their first round pick, but
right.
What were your thoughts on the Falcons?
You mean star as position as opposed to
correct
star player,
star position,
right? It was an interesting draft. Again, they were in a tough spot because not only did they not have their first round pick because they'd sent it to the Rams already, but they also didn't have many picks. Period. Right? They were coming into this draft without much draft capital. And so you're always going to be in a tough spot in terms of
5 picks, I believe.
Yeah, right? They ended up picking 6 times, so they at least added 1. Avion Terrell, I think, was great value. I think it's always hard to know whether the thing coincided with the weird thing that happened. But like Terrell, remember, tweaked a hamstring at his pro day, was somehow still allowed to do a couple of drills, and so posted a pedestrian 40 time and maybe one other thing. Which is going to freak people out because he's not the biggest guy in the world anyway. And so now you've got a relatively undersized corner who also ran slowly. That's red flags all over the place. If we assume that's fake, then him lasting to the 48th pick of the draft is a steal. I mean, this is a guy that could have gone in the first round and didn't.
The game speeds that I've seen are perfectly fine.
I never saw anything on tape to suggest that he was anything other than pretty fast.
Again, Keenan Allen, for the eternity of his life, is called a 4.71 guy.
Right.
And he ran on a bad knee. And so every time there's a slow receiver
Jerry Rice was allegedly a 4.7 guy who had
also allegedly may have been the wrong time. Anyway.
Right. Who also consistently ran away from people every time he caught a slant.
But Keenan Allen's the one I'm using because he ran on a bad knee, but no one remembers that context. He probably really was a 4.55 guy, but for eternity, people are like, well, Keenan Allen was successful at 4.7. So for eternity, Avion Terrell's a 4.64 guy because that's the number attached to his name, but he doesn't play like that, and I don't think that's a real number.
That's what I think. Like, so as long as that's not a real number and it was a product of that hamstring, then I think him being available at 48 is a steal.
And that's what I think ends up being the biggest positive about the Falcons. So say what you want about reaches and steals and what's real and what's not. Getting a guy that was very often expected to go late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
In a year where you don't have a first-round pick, I think is awesome value for the Falcons. So getting Terrell there, you can question. I think he gives up a little bit too much room in coverage at times. He'll get out-muscled at the catch point, but he's getting after it. He's feisty. He's forced 8 fumbles in his career. He's trying to tackle. I think he could play nickel. I think he can at least hang on the outside. I don't think he's an elite coverage corner, but he moves. I mean, all the movement skill stuff is fine and really good. So I know some people loved him maybe a touch more than I did, but I would have been fine with him in the back end of the first round with that position versatility, inside, outside. I think he's a very good player. And I think it might mean a little bit more to the Falcons in it. Ian Cunningham's first pick as general manager, Matt Ryan's first pick as the Matt Ryan president role, whatever it's called. And yeah, that was a good pick for the Falcons.
Yeah, agreed. It always feels good when you get a guy that is being talked about as a first round guy. You get him a round later. It just feels good, even if that's not real. I also love the sort of intangible aspect of reuniting him with his brother. Again, I don't know if that's anything, but it can't be anything other than a positive. If there's any power to it whatsoever, it's a positive thing in that direction to help him become the best player that he could be. There's a question mark about whether he is an outside guy or whether he's strictly a slot. In the second round, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's a bonus if he plays outside and he can do it to a high degree. If he's just a slot, it's still fine in the second round in terms of value. So I think overall you can't see that as anything other than a very good draft pick.
What's the theme of this draft? We're going to own the slot. Avion Terrell, Zachariah Branch, and whatever Harold Perkins is. They're going to own the slot. Zachariah Branch, I mean, the question on him is just running normal routes, but obviously movement skill-wise, he looks outstanding. Was an immediate playmaker as soon as he stepped on the field for USC, transfers to Georgia. He's got punt return skills, overall return skills. He's such a huge percentage of his production came behind the line of scrimmage. But he's a playmaker, man. And again, I think it's 79. He's one of those guys where was he consensus board wise? Like closer to 60 maybe?
Who?
Zachariah Branch. I think he was
64.
Yeah, so he's one of those players. I think when you think about him on day 2, in round 2, it's like I don't know. But when you're in round 3 and at pick 79, I think it's a lot easier to stomach that, I guess. 4.35 speed, playmaker, not necessarily an all-around receiver, but I think he's just a guy you have to account for in the slot that can create after the catch.
Yeah, no, I think that's a nice pick as well. Like I think given the relative lack of draft picks, I think they've come away with some pretty good players.
Beyond that, Daniels, you can see some hard hitting on his tape. The linebacker of Oklahoma. I was so interested by how excited Matt Ryan was. I didn't hear the post game press conferences.
Right, we need to figure out. We need to self scout that and figure out what the story was.
Yeah, when Ryan was going nuts in the draft room, I was like, is it Garrett Nussmeier? Like, it must be a quarterback, right?
It's gotta be.
Just like a hard hitting linebacker, Kendall Daniels. So he must have loved him during the process. Say what you want about Matt Ryan. He seems like he's having fun in this whole.
If you were getting paid millions for a fake job, wouldn't you be having a ball too?
Yeah, I mean, he was the perfect candidate for the Matt Ryan presidential role.
I can't think of a better one.
Falcons.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan was the best fit for the Matt Ryan presidential role. But anyway, he was loving the Daniels pick. And then there's Harold Perkins, just a strange career at LSU. So he, as a true freshman, as a pass rusher, had like 8 or 9 sacks, one of the best freshmen in the nation statistically. Interestingly enough, when we were at PFF, the PFF grades didn't match a lot of the production, and that usually means those are cleanup sacks, those are pursuit sacks, and that's a lot of what those were. So he wasn't like an elite pass rusher, and I can't remember if PFF college took some heat for that back when Harold Perkins was like, this is the next dude, right? This is the next top 10 pick. LSU's got a star. And then in year 2, they moved him to linebacker because he was like 210 pounds.
Yeah.
And it was like, you can't hang rushing the passer
That's the thing.
at 210 in the SEC.
And
I think that also matched their perception. And I think there was a little bit of, hey, this might be your next role in the NFL, and maybe conceding to trying to help him from a development standpoint. It was like a strange run for Perkins.
Yeah.
And then he ends up playing more nickel, star, slot, role. So he's played everything. And, again, in the 6th round for a guy that's been a decent playmaker, I don't think he's as good in space, but improving. Not a bad call to get that in the 6th round.
Oh, look, in the 6th round, given the sort of just natural playmaking instinct / ability that he has, that's a phenomenal roll of the dice, right? The problem he has is he's a classic tweener where the reason those guys get kind of trapped without success is because the thing that they're good at doesn't match the body type that they have. The thing that he's good at might just be rushing the passer. Problem is, at 6 foot 220 maximum, that just can't work in the NFL. Like, you cannot be a full-time edge rusher at 6 foot 220. I can't think of a guy who's been able to achieve that at the NFL level. So whether it's that LSU saw that as well and wanted to move him back, whether there was talk at the time that, they're trying to do him a solid and get him into the position that he's going to need to be at the NFL level, whichever it is, the point is he doesn't seem to be that great as just an off-the-ball linebacker. So now he's just trapped without a position at the NFL level. But, in the 6th round, you're like, well, let's take him and see, right? Maybe we can teach him how to be linebacker. Maybe he's the miracle that's able to actually rush the passer at 6 foot, 220 pounds, whatever. It's worth rolling the dice in the 6th round.
Yeah, I think you probably need to either develop him at linebacker or have a plan for him to be a, 3rd down, pass game weapon, blitz a little bit. Ironically, one of my production / workout comps is Drew Sanders, who hasn't really panned out for the Broncos, but remember he was an edge rusher conversion to linebacker a couple of years back for Denver, and we have these conversations.
Haven't they just moved him back? Am I imagining that?
To edge?
Yeah.
They may have.
I might have just invented that in my head, but
it's okay.
I think I read that.
I believe you. Anyway, I think
I don't even believe myself.
It's just funny that that's one of their similarities, and we have this conversation every draft season, which is it's a fun conversation to have. This guy's versatile; he can be a 3rd down weapon. It's really tough to put it all into practice, and see if it works out though. But he's been the last 3 years essentially a walkout, linebacker. Did you get that word? See that word? We got a visitor coming.
Do we?
Your text messages.
Oh.
Anyway, where'd the grades have the Falcons here?
The grades had the Atlanta Falcons pretty low. Again, I think this is, they just didn't have many draft picks and not up high, so people didn't love it. 27th, which I think is pretty harsh. The highest grades they had were an A- for the win, a couple of B+ from CBS, Cleveland.com. The worst grade they had was a D from Marcus Bloomberg. Another D, one D and a D+ from USA Today.
The word was he'll see you tomorrow.
Ah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
All right, let's go to the Carolina Panthers, ironically. Panthers draft started with offensive tackle Monroe Freeling at pick 19. Round 2, Lee Hunter at pick 59, defensive tackle out of Texas Tech. They go Chris Brazzell, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, in round 3. Round 4 is Will Lee, the cornerback out of Texas A&M. 2 5th-rounders, Sam Hoyt and the center out of Kansas State, and Zakee Wheatley, safety out of Penn State. And Jackson Kuwach, the linebacker out of Miami of Ohio, because clearly the Panthers were watching in their draft room, our sleeper show, where Renner dropped his name as, what was it, one of the best 3 cones, or one of the metrics was one of the best of all time. Kuwach, the special teams linebacker out of Miami of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on the Panthers draft? I think a lot of people liked this one.
I love this draft.
You liked this one.
Yeah, I love this draft. It's one of my favorites. I think, again, I talked about Caden McDonald to the Texans being one of my favorite player-to-team fits. Monroe Freeling to the Panthers is one of my favorite player-to-team fits as well. I suspect the Panthers have a need at left tackle. The only question mark is how acute is that need? They brought in Rasheed Walker to kind of cover it short-term because Ike Ekwonu, their former first-round pick, has an injury that he's coming back from, so maybe they're going to need Walker for a while. They only gave him $4 million this year, though, so he's not a long-term solution. He's a stopgap, and even at a stopgap, he's not getting paid well enough that you couldn't put him on the bench. So Monroe Freeling, who has crazy size, crazy athleticism, crazy movement skills, is still a work in progress as a player, particularly in the run game. It's TBD how much time he needs, right, to adjust to the NFL level. He might need a year before he's ready to go. If he does, you've got Rasheed Walker. You've got the ability to park him on the bench for year 1 to basically redshirt him. Or you might be ready to go right away, right? And you're maybe willing to live with some inconsistencies and some weaknesses in the run game. And if he is, you're not paying Rasheed Walker enough to care, right? You can bench him. It doesn't matter. So I think it's a perfect player to team fit. Lee Hunter, I think is a good player, a good addition in the second round.
Let me just talk Freeling for a minute. We'll get to the rest of it. Because I thought you described that well. When we talked about the fit and the ability to sit if he needs to or whatever, I thought that made a ton of sense. My production profile projections on Freeling are pretty poor overall, but I get it. Like, I've spent most of the process trying to describe him as a player. When you've got almost 35-inch arms and run a 4.93 40, and all of this shows up on the field. He, flies out of his stance, excellent movement skills, still very young at the position. I think body and athleticism and what he's already shown looks like the perfect projectable offensive tackle. So I get both sides of it. The negative side of it, earmuffs if you're watching, to our friend. I mean, some of my draft score comps are not great. Jonah Savinier, if he was projected as a tackle last year. Brandon Coleman, who's a tackle guard conversion. Arante Ursary is on there. He's been okay. Tyler Guyton is pretty close from a production workout comp. So there's some hits and some misses. Of all that entire group, I think I like Freeling the best as a player, and I think he can get there with all of his tools and what we've seen so far. But he's on the lower end of previous first-round projectable offensive tackles. Now, that's why he goes at 19. And he goes at 19 to a situation, like you said, where you've at least got a stopgap left tackle, and maybe he ends up being the guy going forward. So I get it as a pick. I would say it's one of the more boom or bust type of picks in the draft. The boom can be really boomy, though, if he hits.
Really boomy. But I also,
all right, go ahead.
It's another reason why I really like, potentially being able to give him that kind of redshirt year and,
For sure.
and work in progress type of stuff. So I really like that as a connection, the player and team. Lee Hunter in the second round, a good run-stuffing defensive tackle. That's a little bit curious, given that they already have Derek Brown there, but I think he's a really good player and good value where they got him. And then Chris Brazzell, the Tennessee wide receiver, in the bottom of the third, I think is a steal. Like, we've talked about him and that Tennessee offense and his skill set, but rare size, speed, length combination, who has shown he can be a high-level route runner during his college career at multiple different spots. I think that's a great value roll of the dice there.
Yeah, so going back to the Lee Hunter thing, I really like that pick. I mean, him and Brazzell both have – I just think it shows where the Panthers roster has come. The fact that I'll read out their defensive line and all their additions over the last 2 years. It's much improved. And the fact that Brazzell, with his speed and upside, and it's just good in the third round as a complement to Tedero McMillan and Jalen Coker and Xavier Leggett. I think Hunter, man, I mean, he moves really well for his size, uses his hands well. He can get after the quarterback a little bit, as you think about some of the defensive tackles who are just, run stoppers or guys that were just going to be early down type of players. I think Hunter can at least pick up some wins on third down, give guards a problem. He's really strong with his strikes. He's outstanding from moving the center and the line of scrimmage and just disrupting up front. And if you look at now, like when a couple of years ago, it was pretty much just Derek Brown on this defensive line. And in 2 years, Nick Scorton in the draft, Jalen Phillips in free agency. We'll see what Princely can do. Uman Mielen didn't do much as a rookie, but that's a pretty good top three as far as pass rushers go. Turk Wharton is still there. Derek Brown, of course, is still there. And you add Lee Hunter to the mix. It's a lot better, man. It's a lot better than it was. So you had Hunter in round 2 where he's immediately going to be part of the rotation. You had Brazzell and what he could potentially do as a vertical threat with Tedero McMillan. You got Freeling in the first, who we already talked about. And all the other guys have a chance. Like Sam Hoyt, like a lot of guys had, or Hecht. I keep going back and forth on Hecht. A lot of people had him as center 1 in this class.
Yeah.
And you get him in round 5, and he has a chance to be a starter by, year 1, year 2.
Right.
Immediately competing. You don't always get that on day 3. Zakee Wheatley, another one of those safeties. I think find your favorite safety rankings. He's like top 5 for some and top 10 for others. You get that in round 5. I think they got players that can at least compete for starting spots and contribute all the way throughout this draft. And I think that's really good value for the Panthers.
Yeah, and then Kuwach is exactly the type of player that like has great training camp preseason hype. Maybe ends up sticking on the roster as a special teams guy, but he's the type of guy that everyone gets excited about come training camp and thinks they've got the next steal.
It was the 1-5 10-yard split. 99.6th percentile at linebacker. Good. But I think he's a special teamer, right? He's a special teamer right now, and you try to develop him.
Yep.
Wheatley's another one of those guys. I don't have his tackle right handy, but he felt like could tackle and do some damage at safety. So I like this draft. I think Hecht has a chance to play. You might have stolen a starter in round 5, and then the first 3 players I think all contribute. Will Lee too, same thing. Multiple years of solid production at corner and some size, and I think he had some good outside corner depth for that team.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. What else? What did the people say about the Panthers?
The Carolina Panthers draft, 9th overall, so pretty well, but not one of the top. Really dragged down by just a couple of people, actually. There's a ton of A's this draft. A for the Sporting News, A for the San Diego Tribune. Danny Kelly from The Ringer had them an A. Athlon Sports with an A plus from the entity formerly known as PFF, an A from Bleacher Report, and then the C's that dragged it down. A C- from Sports Illustrated, a C- from the New York Post, and a C from the curmudgeonly Pete Briscoe.
I don't know where the C- is. I mean, I gave the negative side of Freeling, where I think he's a.
You have to hate Freeling to give it a C-.
That's what I mean. You have to really not like him,
and think the Lee Hunter is redundant.
Perhaps. I mean, but you have to really not like Freeling. And I gave the negative side of it. Like, it's not a great profile from a
there's risk.
Projection standpoint. There is risk. But the one other part that I haven't said that we talked about on multiple shows, the Tices love, Nate Tice, Mike Tice. There are
a lot of people. I mean, he was,
a lot of people
now, maybe it was
Freeling.
Fake, but like coming out of the combine, people were like, this guy's going top 10. He's the name on the rise. The Browns are going to take him at 6, blah, blah, blah. Like, he was being talked about as tackle 1 in this draft for a period of time. And as you said, there are people that stayed on that the whole way. The Tices, Dane Brugler, I think, absolutely loved him. I hadn't checked where he landed on his rankings. But that's at least notable. I mean, obviously the consensus overall didn't necessarily align, but
Dane had Freeling as tackle 3, but a first second round grade.
Okay, so
which
in the
is
right
why this is why he's not going top 10 though.
Right, but maybe
with those types of tools.
But at one
if
point
he had better production, he's top 10.
Right, but at one point, Dane Brugler was saying like this guy could be the first tackle off the board. He could be going top 10. Maybe he was just projecting where people would take him.
Yeah.
But point is, there were people that really, really liked him.
All right, man. Let's go New Orleans Saints here. We got 2 more teams to discuss in the South. If you are a Saints fan, tune it in. Go check out our video section. We have a nice breakdown with our friend Nick Underhill from New Orleans Football. And during that interview, we had the breaking news was happening live, the Tyree Wilson trade. So we have that breakdown as well. So go check it out.
Which he just dealt with on the fly while doing the interview.
If you're a Saints fan who's not following Nick Underhill, I don't know what you're doing. He's the best on the Saints beat. Jordan Tyson, first pick at 8 overall, Arizona State wide receiver. Kristen Miller, the defensive tackle out of Georgia in round 2. Back to Georgia for Oscar Delp, the tight end in round 3. Jeremiah Wright, Auburn guard in round 4. The second fourth rounder is Bryce Lance, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. Lorenzo Styles Jr., Ohio State safety in round 5. Barian Brown, the wide receiver out of LSU. And then TJ Hall, cornerback out of Iowa, is the 7th pick. Mickey Loomis had a very quick press conference, a little snarky but funny remark saying, you must love our draft. We drafted LSU players.
Yep.
Or an LSU player, and we didn't trade up. So you must love our draft. End of press conference. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Did they trade down for Sonny Styles, or is that a pick they already had from a different move? That's the
Lorenzo, you mean?
Lorenzo Styles. That's the pick they got for the receiver that they sent to Seattle.
Tyree?
No. What's his face? That the Seahawks re-signed.
The guy we love. Rashid Shaheed?
Yes.
Dude.
God damn it.
Our favorite receiver.
That's the Rashid Shaheed pick. The two of them.
Do you know by June I almost forget everybody's draft class?
I know.
So Mickey, 2 weeks, and then I have to just
Mickey is still never traded down, right?
It happens.
That's still the stat? That Mickey is never traded down?
I think so.
That's nuts.
This was a fun draft for the Saints. What were your thoughts at the top here? They go Tyson at 8.
Good draft. I like this. Tyson, I really like the draft overall.
I was setting you up, my co-host,
no,
with
but
some analysis on Tyson.
Okay, but we started off with, just the draft class.
I got you.
And you pivoted into Tyson just on the fly.
It's your turn to speak now, though.
Got it. I really like the draft class as a whole. I think they drafted a lot of good players. They also drafted quite a lot, which, again, is a move the Saints are pivoting towards. Generally speaking, they are correcting the direction of this franchise pretty well over the last few years. Helped massively if they've hit on Tyler Shuck as a quarterback, which it looks like they may. And Nick Underhill was certainly talking him up as like the absolute real deal heading into the season. And this is a draft that should help him. Jordan Tyson was a pretty intriguing prospect. His pre-draft process was kind of all over the map. He had one of those weird graphs on the grinding the mocks thing where it was like all downhill until he did his pro day, and then it shot up right to the fringes of the top 5 again. He's incredibly twitchy. He's got impressive sort of body contortion skills. He's got size, length, all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of things he does well, but you have to at least be a little bit concerned by his injury history and profile. Not tremendous after the catch, tends to sort of catch the ball and hit the ground Isaac Bruce style. Just not, there's a reason we say Isaac Bruce. It's not like it's a death knell for your career or anything. It's just a limiting factor to his game. And then, there are varying degrees of concern depending on who you talk to about his overall ball skills, sort of on the Casey Concepcion spectrum. It's like, how concerning is this? It's definitely not like off the charts elite. He has some amazing plays in there, but overall, I don't think it's necessarily a strength of his game.
Yeah, fascinating prospect. I think you hit a lot of the positives and negatives around Tyson. The data likes him, doesn't love him.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the entire Tyson thing. Like when you watch him, I keep thinking he moves differently. I think he's got a feel about him, a route running and athleticism that is potentially outstanding here. You could say shades of Odell Beckham. I've mentioned Luther Burden from last year. Just looks a little different, especially compared to others in this class. But then I don't think he's as technically sound as Carnell Tate or Denzel Boston and some others in the class. He might not be as athletic as Casey Concepcion as a route runner. He's just kind of pretty good at a bunch of different things with Tyson. Then you have the injury history. But I think they've added a lot of athleticism to this receiving core between him and then Bryce Lance with his size and 4.3 speed. Yeah. And so Tyler Shuck, they're giving him some weapons here, assuming Chris Olave stays healthy.
Delp.
And Oscar Delp. And we'll talk about Delp in a second. But that's 3. Delp ran in the 4.4s.
Yeah.
Lance in the 4.3s. Tyson, I'm saying he moves completely differently. I mean, they got way more athletic on the offensive side of the ball. And the other part that's encouraging for the Saints, we kept wondering, would they get a guard high? Like if they took Francis Maui-Noah, you could make the argument that they've got a top 3 offensive line. If you liked Maui-Noah at guard,
right,
you could make the case that they're a top 3 offensive line in the league. Obviously, they didn't go that way. But that's how far they've come from a line perspective. The 2 first-round tackles the last couple of years, bring in David Edwards from free agency. Eric McCoy is one of the best centers when healthy. Right guard's the only real question mark. And they
did draft one.
They drafted Jeremiah Wright, see if he could compete with Cesar Ruiz. But this is how far the Saints have come. So the offensive line, I think, is in much better shape than it's been the last 3, 4, 5 years. And now Jordan Tyson, Chris Olave, Oscar Delp, Bryce Lance, Barian Brown late, LSU via Kentucky. They've added a lot of weapons. And, Travis Etienne during the offseason, or Etienne this offseason.
Yeah. No, they've absolutely. This is an offense that could go. If Tyler Shuck is the real deal, this thing could move in a really good direction very quickly. Particularly if, Chris Olave stays healthy and remains in the lineup the whole way, adding Jordan Tyson, Bryce Lance as the deep threat there, and then Oscar Delp. And Delp is this fascinating prospect where he's the guy where you look at the movement skills, the athleticism, the crazy speed, and you're like, why was this guy not given more opportunities within that offense? Like, he could have had insane numbers and didn't. It feels like a guy that's destined to be a better NFL player than he was in college simply because of being given more opportunity.
The Delp thing was interesting because you have the tight end run, and there's all the inline blocking tight ends. And by the way, Delp, really interesting prospect because he's kind of skinny looking in the 240s, but then you watch him block in line, and he'll like use his leverage really well. He just gets under defensive ends. Like he's not a slouch blocking in line. I think he's like a lot of tight ends. There's a lot of ugly losses in there for even like the best tight ends in the world can get beat up in there sometimes. But he holds his own. But when I was watching Delp, I thought his speed is on that spectrum of he helps you stretch the field both vertically and horizontally. Like you get him to the flat. You get him up the seam, you run him on crossers, and there's a few tight ends like this in the class. Kenyon Sadiq up in the first round, but you get Delp at pick 73, and I think a few other teams are coveting him at that spot as well, and that's going to be the fun thing to keep an eye on here when the Marlon Kleins and Burke Kirchers and other theoretical wide tight ends are going ahead of Delp. Does he end up becoming at least the best pass game value here? Because I think he can do some damage there. So I thought Delp was really good, and it just fits this theme of adding playmaking speed to the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like
Brown, he ran in the 4.3s too. I think.
I feel like Delp has the ability or has the potential to be a real sort of
4.4
steal simply by getting a bigger workload.
Kristen Miller in round 2 as well. Really like him, and I thought multiple years of just being weak at defensive tackle. Brian Brzee a couple of years ago, he still struggles in the run game, even though he's a decent pass rusher. I think Miller immediately upgrades their run defense. He's got great hands, powerful hands, fast hands, quick hands, can win as a pass rusher. I thought he could do a little bit more. I just thought the production was slightly underwhelming, and he could maybe end up being a better pro than college player, but he's got a lot of tools. I mean, he looks like a guy that should have been a first rounder with what his good plays look like. And so I think pretty good value there at 42, and immediately adds a good run defender to that defensive tackle group, and maybe he ends up being their best defensive tackle right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a tremendously high bar, with all due respect.
What else on this draft? Lorenzo Styles, another athlete. I mean, they're just
4.2s.
Just running fast, man. A lot of speed for the Saints. Jeremiah Wright's profile is not great. He may have talked more than anybody at the Senior Bowl.
Did definitely talk more than anybody. Was trash talking the entire time. I wanted to love him. I was like, this guy is trash talking. He's my guy. And then I saw him get whooped in a few reps. I'm like, okay, fine. Having said that, I mean, look, you were like, if you replace Cesar Ruiz in the lineup with like a high drafted player, this becomes an awesome offensive line. Having said that, again, it's kind of like the defensive tackle thing. It's not a high bar to be able to get somebody in the lineup and say that's an upgrade. It's not a high bar to be upgrading from Cesar Ruiz. So I think that job will be there to be won if Jeremiah Wright shows anything.
So they got him in the 4th. Just a 12 in my system out of 100. Not the best.
No.
Projection in the world. One solid season last year at Auburn, show some power in the run game, but as you mentioned, there was some good, some bad at the Senior Bowl and on film at Auburn.
And definitely a player that I think will be given the opportunity to compete for that job. So,
for sure. I just wanted to get Miller really quick and my numbers on him. I had him in the 60s. Like, he's another one. Like I just thought I liked him on film more than the numbers even liked him.
Right.
I think he's disruptive in the run game. Solid enough as a pass rusher. I think he's good all around. I just really like him in the 40s.
Composite grades had them 14th, so middle of the pack. A few A's in there. A from The Score, A- from Yahoo Sports, A- from Cleveland.com, and then the low watermark grades were a couple of C pluses from Prisco and Danny Kelly from The Ringer. Prisco basically didn't hate the Jags draft as much as everybody else, and then hated everything else in the Souths.
Sounds right. Anyone near Jacksonville can't compete for Pete. All right. You ready?
Yep.
Team 32 out of 32.
Team 32.
The Tampa Bay Bucks. They start with Reuben Bain at pick 15. Josiah Trotter, the linebacker out of Missouri, is their second-round pick. Third round, they go Ted Hurst, wide receiver out of Georgia State. Keontae Scott in the 4th round. The nickel out of Miami. Demonte Capehart, defensive tackle from Clemson. Billy Schruth, the guard out of Notre Dame in round 5 as well. And then Bauer Sharp, the LSU tight end, in round 6.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on the Bucks draft, Sam?
Really like this draft. Obviously, we were going to love pretty much any draft that came away with Reuben Bain, particularly, at pick 15. I feel like that's going to be a steal. I understand the reason to be concerned, right? The arm length thing, it is historically low, right? And this is what there weren't comps, right? The closest we were like, just get your arm remeasured at your pro day so you can at least be in the Melvin Ingram world. So you can say, oh, look, here's one comp of a guy that went high and was a really good NFL player. Without that, there's basically no comps. However, everything about his tape says it doesn't matter. Like everything about his tape says he's going to be good anyway. He's a beast. He's a monster. Everyone's talking about his walk to the podium. Do you see that?
Yes.
All business. Didn't give a crap about the mirror. He walked by the thing, grabbed his cap, was like, readying himself to go take a rep right now just to hug Raj.
Big numbers guy here. That's the people that do that, they're going to win. They're going to succeed.
I mean, it was like the Combine, right? Everyone was like, this is a dude who showed up for the Combine, the biggest interview of their life without having a haircut, right? It was just all business. I mean, these are good things, right?
No time for that.
Again, maybe it doesn't matter. But if it matters, it's all positive in Ruben Bain's direction. The guy only cares about destroying offensive linemen opposite him. Doesn't care about, getting a haircut. Doesn't care about posing in front of a mirror. Doesn't care about anything. Just cares about going to work.
Whoever got Bain, the argument for, the argument against, I get. I mean, we've heard the phrase historic outlier.
Yes, and he is one.
I hate myself for how often we talk about arm length on this show. I hate it. But it's a story.
It's like
it's a story because in every draft room, they're like, who are the comps?
Yeah.
Put up the comps. No one shows up.
It's like the consensus board discussion, right? That you have to at least look at it and say there is historical data that says anybody in this bucket doesn't produce well, right? Now, again, you can conclude at the end of it. It is a reasonable thing to look at all that data and conclude, I don't care. Right? Given all the information we have, I believe that for reasons X, Y, and Z, this guy will overcome this data. But you can't ignore the data, right? You have to at least acknowledge it's there and it says whatever it says, right? And for Ruben Bain, you have to at least acknowledge that if he becomes a good NFL player, he will be the new furthest outlier, the new most anomalous data point on the chart will be Ruben Bain because of those arms.
And we've said a bunch of times too, play style wise, I think everything about him is different.
Yeah.
And I do
Which is why I think he will be the new guy.
And I do wonder how much this actually works in his favor. I've described it to the pitcher pitching below the hitting speed, right? Everybody's throwing 97. Well, what if I went out there throwing 85 right now? It's so different that maybe it works in your favor. And here's where Bain's different. Not just the arm length, crazy power.
Yeah, ridiculous power.
And bend. Right, yes. So he's got two things, but he doesn't have the get off necessarily. Right, the whole package is a unique, a unique blocking experience for the offensive tackle. How's that?
And just a unique player. Guard. Yeah, and just a unique player. I mean, this is the reason he is. This is the reason we think he's the outlier. The Bucs obviously think he's the outlier. He is unique. My comp for him was like late '80s Mike Tyson. Right, zero length, but it didn't matter. He got like whoever looked at Mike Tyson was like, man, that guy's the limiting factor in Mike Tyson is his arm length, his reach. He doesn't have the reach of the guy. It didn't matter. He got inside their guard and he smacked the head off them. Yeah. Right? So, Ruben Bain gets inside the reach, the arm length of an offensive tackle and then destroys that guy.
And then I do wonder how it's going to be fascinating to watch the teams that let him drop to 15. Are we having that? How did the Dolphins, or how did the Cowboys, how did all these teams let Bain drop to 15? Or is he just another player where, the length limitations were an issue? But we're only having this conversation because he was also a dominant player. Mm-hmm. He was dominant on the field. He was the most disruptive player in college football, at least the first month, and then, toward the end was pretty strong as well. So really like Bain as a player. And look, really interesting process by the Bucs as well. Teams do these simulations, and we were doing mock drafts where they were getting Akeem Mesidor, the number 2 edge rusher for Miami, and they get Bain. I wonder how many times they thought he would even fall to 15, even with the arm length question. So I thought it was smart of them to take him when they had the opportunity. Round 2, I think their run defense improved with Josiah Trotter. I know, Alex Anzalone comes in. Savasier Dennis struggled mightily last year in coverage as a linebacker. I think Trotter's got similar question marks. I think the way he sees things coverage-wise, he was just out of position a lot. But, man, he not overall playing style, but his profile reminds me a little of Zach Cunningham who's spent a lot of time in the league as a long run-stopping linebacker who had should have been an elite coverage defender or a coverage linebacker, but wasn't. Trotter's got some of those questions to iron out. I don't always hold that against linebackers because a lot of it's scheme-driven and you got a lot on your plate. But I think Trotter's a really good player at 46.
Yep.
And I know you've liked Ted Hurst at 84, getting him and Brazel, those guys going in the late third based off some of the other receivers that went in the second. I think Hurst is really good value at 84 there.
Same. Malachi Fields got talked about as having the best play at the Senior Bowl all week. Ted Hurst had one, I think, that could absolutely rival it and maybe better, absolutely moss the guy in the end zone for a deep touchdown. And I think the Senior Bowl was pretty important for Ted Hurst as well because it showed that he could improve on some of the weaknesses of his game against an all-star level of competition. I thought he played pretty well at the Senior Bowl, practiced pretty well. And the physical talents, the physical abilities are obvious. I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's fast. Like, the physical skills are there. And the sort of big question of his, it's a weird career arc for him in terms of basically not recruited, didn't stand out at a lower level of competition until the last couple of years at Georgia State, and then didn't transfer his way up until the Senior Bowl, where this was the first sort of opportunity for him to show what he could do against a higher level of competition. I forget who it was he played early last year where he basically got shut down absolutely by the best level of competition he faced. But when you look at the targets, half of them were batted at the line, intercepted, it was not him. He was open for a lot of those plays. It's just the ball never got anywhere near him. Sometimes there's only so much you can do as a receiver if the level of competition overwhelms everybody else around you.
I just want to discuss the other two defensive players as well. Keontae Scott, Damontae Capehart. So Scott, he was one of those guys, everybody who watched him on film was like, love this guy.
Yeah.
Love this guy. He was a huge factor for Miami, played nickel for them last year, transferred in from Auburn. First off, went back to his Auburn tape a little bit because he played on the outside there and was awful in 2024. Terrible on the outside. Now, he ran a 4.33. He's 25 years old, right? 24, 20, what is he? 25 years old. Ran a 4.33, 5'11". But I think he's going to play nickel. When he was on the outside at Auburn, he was just getting beat at the catch point. He was slipping all over the place. It just looked bad. But last year, playing this, and he moved in and out at Auburn, but when he was on the outside, it was ugly. Last year, you look at his highlight reel, it's do not run a screen anywhere near Keontae Scott. He will blow it up.
Yeah.
He will destroy the receiver trying to block him. He is an impact player in and around the line of scrimmage, your classic nickel type. The questions are going to be, well, he's 25, that whole deal, but, he's fast, moves extremely well, he's tough, and he just doesn't get blocked. And just a really good modern-day nickel type. And I'm surprised he goes in round 4. He was a lot of people's film favorite type of player.
Yeah, 4 feels like a steal, whatever you think about him. But he feels like the classic guy where it's he's the sort of the classic slot defender who's basically limited to only being that, right? And that caps a value of a guy in the draft, but it feels like it caps it. I mean, it feels like the value is still significantly higher than the 4th round. So even with that limitation, it feels like he's undervalued there. I do wonder if the sort of diminishing value of smaller slot corner only players is going to be directly tied to this growth in blocking tight ends, more heavy personnel, the growth of big nickels, right? Third safeties as opposed to 5 foot, sub 200 pound defensive backs, cornerbacks. I wonder if those guys are suddenly going to become very undervalued because of the way the league is pivoting.
But Scott looks like the type of player you want out there because of the way he knows how to leverage against blocks. He'll mix it up in the run game, and he's an easy mover as well. But I think he can hang out there. I think he's the type of guy you would want out there today. Damontae Capehart too. We've talked a lot about the Bucs just hitting the ball down the fairway and making good pick after good pick after good pick. And we've also talked about how Bain's got the short arms and Kalijah Kancey has the short arms, and Capehart's the complete opposite type of player, but love this in the 5th round because he's an athletic freak, 34.5-inch arms, moves extremely well, ran a 4.84, 171.10 at 315 pounds, and just never really produced at Clemson. He did in spurts. Like, you could definitely see some plays where it's all there. His strikes are powerful. He's a little bit on the older side. You could see where the length plays. If he doesn't win with length, he gets moved, high pads and the whole thing. But love this in the 5th round. And if we think that Clemson's doing a poor job of developing defensive linemen and that TJ Parker and Peter Woods and Capehart have not developed properly, then this is a good spot to pick him and see if the NFL development will, get the most out of him, because he's got a lot of tools to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did the people have the Bucs draft?
Composite grades, one of the highest, tied for 5th with the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of A's, an A+ from the Score, a couple of A's, like straight A's, New York Post, For the Win, Yahoo Sports. Lowest grade they had was a straight B from Briscoe and Fox Sports and USA Today.
Does he not like Bane's stumpy arms?
Almost certainly not. Plus, they're Tampa, local, probably hates that.
Jags have to be the top Florida team. Might be. That's it. 32 teams.
Wow.
Out of 32. We did it.
Under time, too. Look at this.
We were on time.
It's not even 11.
Souths. We did a good job. Not too much rambling. I thought we might go off the rails a little bit.
100,000 subs. I'm going shirtless. That's what I said. Can't back
did.
away now. And I'll
We're
do it,
moving.
unlike Mike McDaniel, who apparently just reneged on it. Didn't do it.
We started the weekend at 79,000, so we appreciate everybody that's new and that's joined us.
Absolutely.
It's a great weekend.
Did you see the news? The Miami Dolphins will be playing Caden Proctor at guard, not tackle.
And left guard in particular.
Indeed.
We had theorized that could be the thing that they do to start with.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean in perpetuity, but
Sure.
that's they have 2 starting tackles right now, and then see what happens going forward. But yeah, I think that makes sense.
I think that's where he should play anyway. I would love to see them keep him there. I hope that's what they do, and he's good enough there that they don't mess with moving him. I would be a little bit scared of him at tackle, but I really like what he could do at guard.
The other slight correction, the Chargers fans were up in arms because we didn't hear the announcement that Jake Slaughter was announced as a guard.
Oh.
The center out of Florida.
So that's why. Okay.
And I partially just didn't see it because he just felt like a pure center.
Yeah.
I think McDaniel's
I was getting texts that people were losing their mind over my critique of the Chargers draft.
Well, because you just cared about the guard need, and I
Yeah.
said I don't care about the need anyway.
Right.
I also just didn't see Slaughter as maybe doing that. But
I mean, I
give him
do
a shot.
did care about the guard need. I don't know if I love Slaughter at that as the answer to that. Again, particularly when you're even if you think Emmanuel Pregnon is scheme limited, I'm not 100% sure that's true. I would still prefer him over Jake Slaughter playing guard.
Yeah,
even within that offensive scheme.
Slaughter was on the slightly, not even undersized, but like the lower end of size for centers. He'll be really on the lower side for guards, but it's McDaniel's scheme.
Yeah.
He just worked with the 270-pound center
Right.
and Aaron Brewer, so maybe it ends up working out. But that was the other thing.
That does definitely change the analysis a bit, that if that's their plan at guard.
We've got one more draft show to go. It's going to be a fun one. We've pre-recorded 2 interviews.
Yep.
One with Lance Erline and one with Trevor Sikkema. That's showing up tomorrow. We're also going to unveil the deep dive that I've done on day 2, reaches, consensus board reaches, what it means for tight ends, for defensive tackles, and just some further analysis on what we've seen, coming out of this draft and how we should think about it. That'll be tomorrow. We're going to pre-record that today. That'll be tomorrow's show.
Yep.
Going forward, we're going to go 2 shows a week, Monday and Thursday. It's our off-season cadence. We'll get back to 3 shows sometime in July around training camp, but 2 shows a week for the off-season. Mohal's asking if we've got any vacation plans before the season. Producer Will said he's taking time off. I don't know why.
I don't know how that's allowed, really.
It's not allowed.
Really, to be honest. I got a lot of time earmarked for overhauling a Mustang.
That's your staycation? A little staycation with the Mustang.
I bumped into a neighbor yesterday, and I was explaining to him that somehow what started off as installing a cup holder has ended up with me deciding to rip out the entire interior of the Mustang by myself, re-insulate it with sound deadening material, install a firewall, and also the thing was telling me, well, while you have the car in pieces, it's a perfect time to weather strip the whole thing as well. So I'm also going to be weather stripping the entire thing as well, which is every window seal,
Do you need me to
rubber,
come over and
door
help with all
seals. I can't possibly imagine a way that you would be useful in that scenario.
Me neither.
Other than I did say you could potentially serve as the jack. Like if you just held the car aloft, that would be the only way I could see you being useful.
I don't know if that's good for my back.
Probably not, no. But yeah, maybe this weekend, if all the stuff arrives in time, because it's now going to be a long weekend for us, I will potentially be, again, it's like, I'm not a mechanic. I've never done any of this in my life, right? And I've done a couple of things already, like change the cigarette lighter, which was easy enough, and change the wipers from start to finish. That seemed okay. Ripping out the entire interior solo, including, seats and stuff, and it seems easy enough, right? Like I've cursed screws and some bolts and stuff. It doesn't seem difficult, but it feels like it'll be a nightmare.
If I bolted anything into the car, I wouldn't trust it.
No, I wouldn't trust it either. Yeah, that's another reason I wouldn't want you doing it. But once it's done,
Mohall wants a members-only video of me sitting inside the car.
It's supposed to make a tremendous difference to the sound quality, the ride quality, all these kinds of things, right? And when it's done, it'll be, I'm sure, much better.
What's the ETA, do you think, finishing all this work?
Theoretically.
4th of July.
Theoretically, it's doable in a weekend. In practice,
you're not doing this
in practice. I don't know. It's going to take weeks.
4th of July. Maybe.
The thing, I will say, the picture of I feel like the soundproofing thing will actually go okay. My concern will be the weather stripping. The kit, just the picture of the kit of the weather stripping thing made me sad. I feel like that's going to be an absolute cast iron nightmare. So we'll see. People were asking for members only videos of this go. I don't know if I could set up a tripod and just record me swearing constantly at
do like the super fast, like all your work montage.
It would just be like a stream of bleeps.
I know. I want a Rocky style 80s montage of your work.
Yeah, except instead of it would just be.
There's no easy way out.
What we need is just a super cut of me like bleeping out swear words, right? Of like here's me wrenching on the seat. Like
get
beep,
Scout
beep,
recording
beep.
This whole thing. Yeah, set up the tripod. Let's be an influencer and record everything that you do here.
But I did locate. I thought the seats were actually literally, they didn't move. They were bolted to the thing. But actually, I located the lever to move the seat on the rail. So you might actually have enough legroom to fit in it now.
Can't wait to test it out.
Yeah.
Fun. I have to go back. I've got 2 Massachusetts trips in the next couple months. Our usual 4 weeks or so, June and July. And then we've got a wedding. But we don't want to miss too much of our kids' baseball season. So it's like a 5-day, 6-day trip down and back in the minivan with all the kids. A lot of driving.
By the way, none of this stuff that the soundproof, all this crap that's not even on the list of stuff I wanted to do to it, right? This is just ancillary stuff that I decided because I pulled up the carpet trying to put in a cup holder. I'm like, there's no insulation in this at all. It's just carpet and metal.
You have a busy summer ahead with the Mustang. That's what you get.
It's going to be a money
pit. The Bengals working with Cassius Howell. Got
right.
A lot of work
this is what they're like.
Camp and everything.
They probably went in there expecting to fix something, right? And then, we got to overhaul this as well while we're at it.
Just want to take a minute to thank everybody, though. We've been going not completely nonstop, but pretty close since last Thursday night.
Yeah.
A lot of draft coverage, and we've had it's a record. We've set a record.
Yeah, how many hours of stuff have we done the last week?
A lot of hours. Thursday night, Friday night, throughout the day, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday reviews, touched on every team. And we just appreciate everybody for being a part of this and following and subscribing. And, it's only the second year we've done this.
Yeah, and for generally
33rd team here with Check the Mic.
Generally coming over here with us. We left PFF to create this thing by ourselves with the 33rd team, create the show from scratch again because we didn't get anything on the way out the door. And A, that was a big risk. And B, turns out we needed a jump when we did, given what happened to the place we left once we did.
Maybe we got out at the right time.
And so that's only possible because of you guys. So thank you very much for continuing to listen and watch along.
So thanks to everybody for that. It is tomorrow's show will be pre-recorded, but tune in. It'll be a lot of fun. If you're sick of us after 50 hours of content or whatever we did, if you're sick of hearing our takes.
Most of that's not us.
Yeah. We just listened to Trevor. We listened to Lance. A really more nuanced conversation with Lance around where the league's going and what he was hearing.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the breakdown tomorrow on what I found from day 2 reaches and some of those Jags and Texans picks and Niners picks that were questioned and how we should think about them. So Tune in tomorrow, 9 a.m., and then next week, Monday, 9 a.m., Thursday, 9 a.m. We're in our off-season schedule 2 days a week, and we'll still have plenty of fun off-season content. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow, 9 a.m. More. Check the mic.